Thank you, Andrew. I can email Greg Smith after class.
Yeah, sure.
If we ever still have a problem,
Yeah.
it would make more sense.
Yeah, I don't think there should be. The other thing you could do, Bradley, is just uninstall it and install it again. To be, just to be sure, try that. Your installed softwares will show up. Just uninstall it and install it again.
So if I uninstall JGO coverage without uninstalling NetBeans, it should be.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying uninstall NetBeans. I'm just saying that's a plugin, right? Just remove that one.
Right. Well, I think we'll wait until after the majority of the lesson because I don't want to fall behind.
Okay. We are not going to use it today, so that's okay.
Wait, what?
We are not going to do JCO coverage today. No. So you can do it during break or wherever or what. It depends on you. Okay, guys. Welcome back. If you know, we were... Why don't you see it? Oops. Okay, sorry about that. Memories, because we've kind of getting back to this after a couple of weeks. We were working on this before the midterm, and then after the midterm, I did do the example with you and the unit testing, right? So I'll bring your focus back. If you don't have what we were working on before midterm, it's available on Blackboard under weekly learning. So in the weekly learning, in the Tuesday section, don't go to Thursday because they have done a little more. So we'll stick to yours. So pick up that folder or file or whatever you want to do. I think I've kept all the files there. All these files must be available to you. And then we'll open up very quickly. I'll go through these two that we've already done, and the tester, of course, how to manage your exception throwing, and then go on to build a new class today. So I'll refresh your memories. We were talking about inventory, right? So products are stored in the inventory. Every product has a name, an ID, how much is the quantity in stock. And we had also taken a price. I had taken the minimum. These were the 4 minimum things I had taken off of a product. If it helps you, since you do databases with me, you can kind of think of that you have an inventory, which is like a table, right? Which I've called stock management. It's like a table, and in the table you have records. And these records, each of these records is a record about a product. So product 1, what is its name? What is its price? What is its quantity? So you can think of it as the attributes. The attributes you can think as column headings here. I think it was called ID. And there was a description. Right? So what am I trying to do? I'm trying to create an inventory or a stock manager now based on products. So if you go through the product class, now every product by default, I mean, if you think of what a product is, every product will have an ID and a name. You'll say, oh, not all products have ID. We usually go with ID because we want something unique with the product. But every product, think of anything that you want to buy. Any product, every product has a name or a description, has a price. This is something that every product will have. Okay, it may have a color, it may have a weight, and so on. But that's the minimum I'm talking about. So what I did was I said every product will have a name, a unique ID. I'm going to work with a unique ID because, like, if you, I'm sure you go for groceries, right? Don't you see people, they type in a number and that gives you, oh, this is. I mean, if it's not a scanner for produce, for example, they put in a number and that's how they say, oh, this is the price of this particular product. So that's like your ID, right? Plus, also you see a quantity that I've mentioned because I'm going to use this product class to create products that I'll be saving in inventory. That's why I added a quantity to it, right? But otherwise, if you kind of leave quantity alone, every product has an ID and a name. It could have a description. It could have a height, weight, not height, sorry, a weight, right? A color, and it has a price. So why I added quantity here? Because I want to kind of maintain an inventory or a stock of these products. There could be more fields. If you remember, I mentioned that there could be more fields. There could be a maximum quantity because you cannot go beyond a maximum quantity when you're trying to stock inventory. There could also be a reorder level where you kind of reorder again, and every store does it. So when they say, oh, their supplies are going down, oh, I have reached the reorder level, I need to reorder again, right? So we could add more attributes, the maximum quantity and the reorder level. I'm not just going to go back and do it because maybe you've lost contact with this. I'll go further and I'll add it myself and then give it to you so that you know, but we could add them, right? So having these 4 attributes, a product has an ID, a name, a quantity, and a price. There is the constructor which initializes your object. Keep in mind, a constructor constructs an object. So it will always initialize the instance variables. Now, how you initialize them will depend upon you. Maybe Maybe you want to say ID is blank, doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe you want to say name is a blank, doesn't make a lot of sense, right? But if you were using an array list, you'll say I'll create an empty array list. So you have to think about it. How should I write the constructor? So to the constructor, I've passed the ID of the product, the name of the product, the quantity that I'm putting in stock to begin with. It could be 0 also, and the price. So when a product is put in stock, is put in the inventory, it has these 4 attributes to it. It will have an ID, it has a description, it has a quantity, it has a price, right? And we said quantity and price should be greater than 0. Makes sense. Okay, so that's how you write your constructor, and the constructor is calling set methods. And the set methods, I mean, I've noticed this, I've brought it to your attention before also. It says overridable method call in constructor. We'll talk about overridable methods when we, maybe next week or maybe a week after, when we start doing inheritance. Okay, and then you will see why, as I've been using set, how can I avoid it? Anyway, then come the 4 set methods and the 4 get methods. So get ID, get name, get quantity, and get price are very simple. They're just returning you the values. And the set price had an exception throwing. And the exception said, if the price is less than or equal to 0, throw an exception, price should be greater than 0, cannot be less than or equal to 0. And I'm throwing an exception called my exception that is not coming from the Java API classes. I created that my exception class. So if you very quickly want to look at that, all it was I had extended exception. And as soon as you extend it, you are doing inheritance. And I create a constructor. In the constructor, I'm expecting a message to come to the constructor. And all that constructor does, it calls its super constructor. That is the first step. That's all it does. So in a way, you've kind of made something in between, like it's just called my exception because you couldn't find an exception that worked for you. Like if you want to say price should be less than 0, there is no exception which kind of matches your thinking of an exception.
So extends is the key name that you use for inheritance.
Exactly. Extends is simply saying that the my exception class is inheriting the exception class, is extending it. So anything in the exception class now you can also use it. So what are you using? You're using its constructor. When you call super, you're actually calling its constructor. And it has to be the first statement. It has to be. A call to the super constructor has to be the first statement in the constructor of a child. So now my exception class is a child of the exception class. And it could do much more, and we will learn when we do it, but I'm keeping it very simple because we haven't done inheritance yet. All it does, it calls the super constructor, and the super constructor means the constructor of the exception class, and it passes it a message. But you can only do this if there is a constructor in the exception class that takes a string. And there is. So it just passes it. That's all it does. Why did I even create my exception? Why didn't I just use exception? So that I could kind of introduce you to, oh, you can create your own exceptions, right? You can do it. And as I said, though Java API has many exception classes, maybe nothing works for you. Like this is an application that is not a general application, not a generic one. I'm writing it for somebody. It has its own functionality and purpose. So if I want to write my own exception class, why not, right? Because I just find it more easier to use. So you could have used the exception class, but remember the exception class is right at the head. And anytime you throw an exception, you have to kind of handle it and so on. So it's just more work. You'll become a little more familiar with it when I start doing more exceptions. This is the simplest form, right? So what do I do it? How do I use it? I check. If the price that you are giving me to set is less than or equal to 0, I throw an exception. Please keep in mind, throw is like a abnormal termination of your method. So it terminates, it returns to whom, whoever had called this method. So from wherever set is being called, it will go back there. It will throw this object of type my exception. New my exception means you've created an object and it will throw it back, right? And who gets it? Whoever has called this method. And you have to keep in mind, when you're throwing an exception, then you have to add throws clause to your signatures of your method. And any method that calls this method also has to either handle it or throw it further, right? Keep that in mind, okay? So that's what the price was doing. And if everything was fine, it was just setting the price, right? So I'll do something like this for maximum quantity also and for reorder level also. The more variables I add, the more instance variables I add, if I need to set them, your maximum quantity, for example, cannot be less than your quantity. Maximum means what I can store at the maximum. Your reorder level should be less than the maximum quantity. Okay, so a little bit of inventory you'll have to kind of keep in mind. The set ID was simple. I wasn't doing anything in it at all. I was just saying, and notice how I've made it a private method. I've made it private means nobody, this only the methods in the class can call it. Why did I make it private? Because ID is unique and can only be set once. You cannot change it. Once you set the ID of a product, you cannot change it. You say, why? It's a rule I made. Right? You just can't say, oh, the product ID is 1 and it changes to 2 tomorrow, it changes to 5. You can't do it. You kind of think of ID. Can your student numbers change? No. They're fixed once and for all. Same concept with product ID. That's why I cannot change it. So I didn't even need a set method actually. I didn't even need it. I could have done a straight assignment in my constructor. But writing set method is just easier because then if you have to do any validation, you can do it right there. I mean, you don't have to. So therefore, notice it's private. And that's what I was expecting you to do when you did your exam. But I never saw it. But that's okay. Now you know it, you'll be careful. So I call the set method here in my constructor. I could have simply said ID gets ID right here. I could have done it. I could have done this right here. I could have said this dot ID gets an ID. And because once ID is set, it never changes. So the only way to change it is you'll have to kill the object and create a new product. That's the only way. Right? So I made that rule because it made sense to me. And therefore you can do that assignment right here. Or if you want to write a set method out of habit, do it, but please make it private. Then nobody can change it from the outside. Right? Therefore you don't see a warning here. It's not telling you anything about overridable methods because it's a private method. Even children cannot use private methods, right? Private only belongs to the class where it is. It's not inherited. Private methods are not inherited. Then there is a set name, and in the set name, I just gave a name to it. And again, I've made this rule. Once you set the name of a product, you can't change it. Like you can start calling a desk a chair or a chair a desk. You know what I mean? So once a name is given, it's done, right? So if a keyboard is a Microsoft keyboard, you won't change it to Apple keyboard. You know what I mean? So we don't change it. So that's why also name can only be set once. So these two restrictions were done by me as a programmer because maybe my client said we only do it once. We don't need to change it again. So I said, good. If you don't need to change it, then the constructor will do the job and that's it. I won't have a set method. So again, notice my set name method is private in nature. So again, you needn't write this method at all because it's only used inside the class. This is just a convention of writing set methods. Just because we get in the habit, you could have done this straight right here in your constructor. So I would say this is more of a habit than a requirement. I could have done this right here. This dot name is assigned the value of name. The only use of writing a set method, if is in future, they say, oh, we can change names, we want to add something to it. It could happen that when the inventory grows, we want to put something like the year with it, 2017, 2018, or the month when it came in. We want to add it to the name. Then all I have to do, I have to change the private into public, and I don't have to do much. So that way, it's kind of easy to have it in case things change, just to make it public. That's how it helps, right? Otherwise, at least in this, it's not required at all. But you're kind of thinking you're thinking, if I need to extend my program in future, if things change, then is there an easy way without redoing it? Yes, change private to public and it will work. Okay, so that's the use of writing set methods for extensibility. But if things don't have to change, your name doesn't change, your student ID doesn't change, then it's fine. But of course, you can change your programs. So programs will never be set with a private set method. So you have to think, do I need a set method? Do I need a public set method or do I need a private set method? And this is important. You just can't close your eyes and say, oh, these are the instance variables, write all sets, write all gets. You don't do that. You have to think, do I need a set? Do I need a get? Social security number, right? There should be no get method for it. You just can't go to the registrar's office. I can go to I could, but a student cannot go to a registrar's office and say, oh, this is my name. Can I have the student ID of my friend? You can. They won't give it to you, right? Because it's confidential. And especially think of social security numbers. They're secured. You just can't go and ask the HR for my social security number. You can't do it, right? Then there is no get method. There is no button with get which says, oh, get me this. Can't happen. So you don't provide it. So what you give on the front end, your methods on the front end, something you have to think about it. Do I or do I not need it? Right? Think of a car. When you sit in a car, you have your control panel, right? You only have things you can do. You just can't do anything with the engine. You can brake your car, you can increase, not brake, I mean you can apply brake to your car, right? You can increase your speed, decrease your speed, you can do things like that. But you can't just say, oh, I can do anything in my engine. That's not how it can be done because you don't have those interface. So think of it like an interface and you think, do I need set buttons on my interface? Do I need get buttons on my interface? That's the interface. It's like anything, it's like your phone, right? Or like a calculator. You can only use what is provided. And who decided it? Definitely somebody decided it. And so when you create programs, you decide, do I need set methods? Do I need get methods? And you'll say, do I just decide by experience? No, your client will always give you the requirements. And then you can always say, oh, you know what? If you're not going to change the name of the product, I don't think you need a button to change it. I won't provide you with that button. You won't have it on your interface. You can't go and click it and say, change the name of my product. You'll say, okay, I don't need it. So don't provide a set method. Okay, so that's how we think, what's private, what's public, do I need it or don't I need it? So I kept it here for extensibility. In future, if things need to change, I'll just have to change from private to public. In future, if I want to do some kind of validation in it, right now I'm only doing it in price and quantity, but maybe in ID I have to do some validation. It should be all characters, it should only be of length 10 and so on. I can do it right here. So it's kind of putting a job at a place, then it's easier to look at it and change it. Right? It's easier rather than having it at many places. So here I just made two private methods. So these sets are okay, but they're private. The set ID and the set name are private, but please notice that the set quantity and set price are public methods. Why? You could change the price of a product. It changes all the time. You could change the quantity of a product. You restock it. You add to it. Right? You remove something from it. You sell it. So of course it will change. Right? So therefore these methods are public. Okay. Then we had written methods that were, this is a common method that will automatically always be in a class. I wrote a toString method and I overrode the method from the object class because this was not throwing any exception or anything. It was getting the ID, get quantity, get name, get price. Neither of these methods threw any exception at all. So I don't need a throws clause here like you did in your exam. You were using average in your toString and you had to add a throws and you couldn't do it because then you're not overriding it. Therefore, I gave it a new name. And I formatted my output. Always see that whatever is coming back from the toString is neat, clean, and clear. Because it's something that you will usually, most probably, print on the screen in your application. That's why you write a toString method. It's just saying, show me what's inside you in a human readable, neat form. That's what it is saying. That's the use of a toString method, usually. So notice how I write it neatly. I say, so I write the name, the percentage S will be replaced by the ID, sorry. Then it says there are or is, it could be a single number. This, how many? Get the quantity of, name, which product, in stock, priced at, this is the price. It's just a neat sentence. So if in the application I need to print it out, I'll just say product name dot toString. That's the use of the toString method. Keep in mind, that's what it is uses. Your gets are not clean. They just return you a value, right? But this method is clean. It gives you everything that you want to see of the object in a complete and clear. So it's always usually present. Okay. So what does the toString of the object class do? If you try to use it, it will show you the address where that object is saved in memory. It gives you at something. It gives you a hexadecimal address for your information. So if you don't override it and you try to do something with an object, it will give you where it is in memory. That's not what you want. Okay. But you can try. You can remove the toString and see what happens. Comment it out and see what happens. Then I had written an add stock method. This was only for adding. A student asked me from the other section, we could just say restock. You could be adding stock or you could be removing stock. Suppose it can happen, right? You had something in inventory, it just didn't sell. So you'll kind of send it back to the manufacturer. So you could remove stock also. But my method is called add stock. It's saying adding something to the stock. You could just call it restock and you could then pass a negative value for amount and that would reduce your inventory. But I'll stick to what I've done because I don't want to change it now. So then you wouldn't have to do this. Negative amounts were possible. You're removing something from stock. But this one says, if you are adding something to the stock, this number has to be positive. So I say if it is less than 0, throw an exception. Number of units to be added to this stock should be greater than 0. But keep in mind, it could be restock. Or it could be just change stock. And change could be either adding or removing. right? So it's not always adding, it could be removing also from inventory. And then I said, don't do this. Always use the set methods to change the value of an instance variable. Make it a habit. Why? Because set methods, and that's the use. The method does the validation, whatever you want, it's at one place. Don't copy and paste here and repeat it, though there was nothing here, but why should I do it? What if the setting has created problems? It's a value less than 0, which will not happen. You will say, oh, it will never happen. Amount is 0. How will it have a negative value? How do I know? I'm just doing my defensive programming. I'm not thinking, oh, what if? Oh, it won't happen. I'm just saying, do it the right way. So I'm saying set the quantity and pass the value and add amount to it. So get it, add amount to it and set it back. And I always use my set methods anytime I want to change the value of an instance variable. In class, from outside class. I'm safe, right? This is called defensive programming. So add stock could be called change stock. I'll leave it to that. Then came sell product. Only one unit you are selling. Before you sell, you have to see, do I have anything in stock, right? So I got the quantity and I called it once into a local variable because I was using it 2 times. So if you're going to use a method more than 1 times, just put it in a local variable. You don't have to, but it's saving you a call. You've only made a call once. Whereas if I use this, I do it twice. So that way. So you're checking, is there anything in stock? If there is nothing, you say the product is out of stock, hence cannot be sold. How can you sell it? Else, what do? You decrease 1 from the stock and then set it back. Okay, you decrease 1 from the stock and set it back. Then came another method, which was called, again, it was a sell product, but you could sell it in an amount. Now, the first one, so this is called overloading. The same method, sell product, same name. One doesn't take a parameter and one takes a parameter. Of course, if you wanted to sell a product, I could have passed it a value of 1 and worked with it. I just chose to write a different method because it's just easy clicking without an input. So one is saying I'll work with an input. The other one is saying I'll work without an input, but then I'll only give you one of it. I'll only sell one of it. You don't have to do it. But you see, for the user, we are just making it easy. So if you can do something with a click of a button, rather than click of a button and giving a value, then you go with the easy method. Okay, so sell product without parameters is not a necessity because this will work. I pass it 1 and it will work. I'm selling a product. But as I said, for user convenience, right? Again, you have to keep in mind, interfaces should be easy to use. So think of methods are on the interfaces. So clicking a button, sell a product is much easier than saying sell a product in quantity 1. That's the difference, right? So again, what do I do here? Of course, you can't sell something which is, you can't say sell -5 of keyboards, can't happen. So what do? I check. Is the amount less than or equal to 0? The number of units to be sold should be greater than 0. I give this message to the user. Else, what do? I check, do I have enough? Only then can I sell. So if it is less than amount, you cannot sell them. Else, you decrease the number of amount from your stock and set it back. So get it, reduce, set it back. So notice I'm using get sets all the time. I'm not using instance variables quantity at all. I'm just always getting it. Here, I got it here. I get it. And then I decrease the amount and then I set it back. I don't do any assignment statements myself to change the quantity. I don't do it. It's a kind of, think of it as a rule. Why should you try to do something for which an interface is provided to you? Like when you want to apply brake to your car, you don't go and open the engine and do it. You have a button, you have your brake, you press it, right? Same thing. It is there. Why will I do something foolish? You know what I mean? Why would I do it? So same thing, same concept here. So if you have something on the interface, use it, please. Don't kind of say, I'll go behind the scenes and change quantity myself. Don't do it. There's a button, click it. Okay. Okay, and then I'll show you the use of this equals method today. But I want to do a little change here. As I was going through it yesterday, I kind of thought of it. Before even changing, I mean, we haven't done it before, but you could always do it. You can always check here. What is this? Cars product? Oh, cast. You could always check this as a precaution. Again, you can check if the user has provided you with something. You're basically saying that my object is not equal to null. So it exists. Else throw an exception. You know what I mean? So you can do the opposite. You can say if my object is equal to null, you can throw an exception. What will you throw? You will say throw. Now I can throw a my exception, or since this is an illegal argument, you can also use the illegal argument exception of the Java class. Just because it makes sense, your argument is illegal, right? You can do that. So you can say new, so you can mix and match whatever you like. So I'm going to say new illegal argument exception. Because it makes sense. It is an illegal argument you're passing. And then you can say, what can you say? No object to compare with, or need, you must provide an object reference, or you can, oh, let's not say object, sorry, you must provide a product comparison. Sorry, we shouldn't be using any, these comments are, these are for general public, general user. There, you can do this. Because if the object is null, what are you trying to compare it with? You know what I mean? So you can add another layer of checking here. So what will happen if for whatever, I mean, you'll say, why will I do that? We make mistakes all the time, right? Somebody doesn't know, they're passing null to it. Or they didn't create a object and they're passing it. So if you don't, it will catch it itself, it will. You don't have to bother about it. I'll show you that it catches it itself. But when you catch it, you can pass it a message like what I did. Notice how neat my message is. It says you must provide a product for comparison. Okay, so I'll show you. I don't need to. If I try to mess it up, it will give me a problem. Let me show it to you. I'll comment it out. You just watch me, okay? You don't have to comment it out. Okay, and in your tester, there's a tester already. So what I'll do is here, I'll use, there, I've called it with equals. See, I've called it with equals. I'll just call it with null for the heck of it. I'll just try to call it with null. Null means it's a null object, okay? And let's try to run this now. What happened with, I can't even remember the answer. So these are system out printlns. Product 2. It hasn't given me, oh, do I have, no, I have a try. Oh, okay, I know why, because I didn't catch it. So it's catching my exception. Yeah, it should give me a message. That's strange. It should catch, it should do something to it. Where is this null coming from? Let me see. Oh, here, but that's strange. Why is it saying just null here? Okay, give me a minute. Let me add this exception. Let me catch it. Even if I don't, I should say e.getMessage. Okay. Oh, because I have a catch there. That's why it's not working. Of course, it won't work because I am already catching it. I'll have to remove all these, only then will it throw an exception. So it's not an arithmetic exception, it is an exception. So let's try to only comment this out. Okay, now I'm not catching it. I'm catching my exceptions. I'm catching arithmetic exceptions. And this is not an arithmetic exception. Okay, let's try to run it again. There it is. Now it's come up. I was catching it, so I've already taken care of it. So notice how it is saying. Here, I'm getting a problem here with equals. It's saying something went wrong. And what went wrong was because you passed it a null, and when you passed it a null, see what does the equals method do? Look at what equals method is doing. The equals method was comparing the ID of the null to your object. Like null means it doesn't exist. So this method is throwing an exception here. You're getting an exception right at this line. I wasn't getting it in the previous one because my tester already is taking care of it in this block, in this catch block. It was already taking care. You'll say, but this is called exception. You're throwing illegal. Remember, illegal is a child of exception. So if none of the catches work, the exception catch will always do what it needs to do. That's why I put it at the end. I'll come back to this if you've forgotten how to catch exceptions. So when I do this, of course, it catches it. And when it catches it, then it gives a better message. Though that better message is not very good. It's saying null here. It's just giving a message that came out of the exception. So now it won't give an exception. But the null was also not a good message anyway. So it's giving its own message. Null. Kind of odd, but anyway. Can't do much about it. Right? So putting this here kind of takes care that this message will come up. So now if I do it, I say if the object is null, then do this for me. Now see if I run it, what happens? I'll get a neater message. There, you must provide a product for comparison. You could say equal methods fails or something. You can put something. Products cannot be compared. You can add more to it to say which method failed, right? For your own benefit. Remember, this is all being done by the programmer before he puts his software out in the market. So he's doing all this to check if everything is working perfectly. Then you could even use messages that make more sense to a programmer, but I'm doing it for more from the user point of view. So I say, you must provide a product for comparison. I can add products not compared or product does not exist, something like that, right? So this message is coming from here. And who caught it? The exception catch caught it. So I didn't write an illegal one, but the exception will catch it. So add this. This is something we didn't do last time we did this. But as I was going through it yesterday, I thought, you know what? We should always take care that we are doing the right thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so just another layer of checking. And then all it does is, how are two products compared? The two products are compared by their ID. So if I'm saying compare P1 with P2, that's what I'm saying. They will be equal if their IDs are equal. Why do I need this equals method? Because I said my ID is unique. So when I try to add in my inventory a product, I'll check, does that ID already exist? So you can think of a stock or inventory like a table in your database. Each table has rows, one for each product. The product ID has to be unique. It's your primary. You can kind of think it that, if that helps. Okay. So having said that, so just add that because it's kind of better. So that's your product class, and of course it doesn't have any compilation errors. I'll go back here and I'll change that null to product 2. It's already giving me a warning there. It says object equals null is never true. It's already telling you, but anyway, this was just to show you that if you give good messages, they will come up. They will work, right? Now, very quickly, let's also go through this tester that I wrote. So now you know two ways of writing a tester. You've learned one, like this one. Why learning both ways are important? Because here you're learning how to handle the exceptions with the try-catch plan, right? So it's an application that you're writing. Remember, this is something that you will give to your client and the client will use it. So what is the use of that automated testing that I wrote there? Remember, the automated testing is only a tool for the programmer, not for the user. It's your tool as a programmer. So you write a class, you write a test class and quickly test it. It works. You have to write 10 classes before your application will be ready. You can't keep doing it. Like, it's just easy that when you write a class, you test it, done job. Write second class, test it, done your job. So remember, unit.j testing is a programmer's tool, right? You still have to learn how to write the application. You still have to learn it because that's what the user sees. Okay, so there are two different things for two different purposes. So testing can be done this way, which is ultimately will become your application, but testing can be quickly done automated, though it's not very automated, but still can be done unit testing. So there are two different purposes. Unit.j testing is a programmer's tool. This kind of testing is basically, it's not a testing, it's basically creating an application. Okay, so you have to know how to do both. You should know. So what did I do here? I was teaching you how to handle your exceptions. So one way was, I don't care. My application is going to throw it again, but that's not how it works. When you put a product in the market, you can't say, I don't care. You have to care, right? So in Word or in any software that you use, you're pressing Control S for save and it's shutting down the program. That can't happen. So when you give an application out there to be used, then you have to make it perfect. Otherwise, nobody will buy it. And we've seen this. Software come and they die because they were just not created properly and correctly. So everything is important. User interface is important. One, how efficiently it works is important too. How quickly it works is important. So if you can do a job using one step, why would you choose an application that does the same job using 10 steps? You won't. So you have to think of everything when you write an application. So when you're writing an application, we can't say, oh, I don't care, and say throws all exceptions further. To whom? To the JVM. Can't happen. You have to write something that is perfect. So what do? You handle the exceptions. And handling is not tough at all. All you have to do in handling is anything you want to do, you have to put in a try block. So you start with the opening bracket and then you write your code as if you would write it generally. Right? But that's an important thing that you've done, though it's the only thing. What you've done is you have said that I'll try to do these things, but if anything happens, my exception is thrown, an arithmetic exception is thrown, an illegal argument exception. You could add another block now because you've added a because you've added one, though you don't have to, but it just makes it neater. In the sense, neater means it's its own block. I've thrown one of this kind. This is what happens when I throw an illegal argument exception. Or you know what? If any other kind of exception is thrown, I don't think it will be, but if it is thrown, do this. So you've taken care of the handling of exceptions. And all you have to do is put your code in a try and then put corresponding catches. Job done. How difficult is that? Nothing at all. It's the same thing. We are still doing the same thing. We are writing our code and everything. All we are doing is putting in a try block. It's called a try block. So all you have to do is encompass all your code in a try block. Here I wasn't too neat. I was doing my system out printlns over and over again. Of course, I would change this. I'll put this in a helper method and call the helper method and so on. But this is, I mean, why would I notice same statement, all then cell product, and so on. So I would write a helper method at least for printing, and I can call that method. But right here, the aim was to show you that how do you basically use the try catch blocks. So all you have to do is all your code goes inside the try. You write as many catches as you want in the correct sequence. The children come first, parents come at the end. Like there could be more than one parent or more. So my exception, I put it first. If there is any my exception, I want to catch it first. Then if there is any arithmetic exception, I want to catch that. If there are any illegal argument exceptions, I want to catch that. If there is anything else, and I don't know if there will be, the exception block catch will catch. So see that you have all your catches written properly. Now you needn't have written any of these three at all. Any of these three, you could have removed them. Why? Because my exception is extending exception. Arithmetic exception is also a subclass of exception. Illegal argument exception is also a subclass of exception. Then why did I do it in the right way? Because I know this can happen, and I'm just I know this, what will happen. Though this will do the same job. So you can comment it out. You could, and it will still work, right? It will still work. But just putting it in right catches kind of tells me, oh, you know what you're doing. And of course, a programmer must know what you're doing, right? If I say throw my exception, please don't throw an exception object. If I'm saying please throw an exception object, please don't throw an illegal argument exception object. I'm asking for a purpose. There are some exceptions you needn't even catch and nothing will happen. JVM will take care of on its own. But there are some exceptions like the exception object that you have to handle. The JVM will not allow you, like either how do you handle it, put it in a try catch or do a throws. You have to do something about it. So some exceptions you can just not bother and the JVM will handle them automatically. How does it handle it? Gives a red error message and all that stack, but that's its handling. But there are some exceptions like the exception class itself. So there are two branches. You have an exception class and it has two subclasses. One are called runtime exceptions, and all these are examples, and the other doesn't have a name as per se. But those are something that you have to handle. You have to. So if your program was throwing an exception like your midterm was, you have to have a throws clause. You need it. You need it. But here you could do without it. Notice, did I add a throws clause here? I didn't. Why? Because illegal argument exception doesn't need to be added. It doesn't need to be taken care of by the user. But see, I change it. See, I change this to exception. See what will happen. It will start giving me an error. And the error will be unreported exception must be caught or declared to be thrown. So there are certain classes of the exception hierarchy that you have to handle or catch. So this exception actually is right at the top. So definitely if you throw it, you have to. But then this exception class is divided into two subclasses. One of that subclasses, you don't even have to bother about, illegal argument exception. I don't have to do anything. It won't complain. It won't complain if I don't put a throws clause or handle it. But the other class, if I use any exception from that class, then I have to either handle it or throw it. And classes will usually not handle it. Classes will do what? They will just put a throws clause here. The application will handle it. Classes say, you told me to do this. You didn't give me the right input. Here, have your answer back. It's a problem. That's the design by contract. Okay? That's the design by contract. So see the difference between using an exception object and an illegal argument exception object. There is a difference. This doesn't complain at all. It doesn't say, I don't see any red squigglies. it doesn't say you have to either handle it or throw it, because this class, illegal argument exception, can be handled automatically by the JVM. So before you use an exception, be careful. Can I or can I not? Right? And again, if you're my exception, let's try my exception. And again, have that problem. Why? Because my exception is extending exception. So you have to either handle it or throw it. You have to keep this in mind. Which exception needs to be handled and which exception doesn't. And the rule is simple. You have exception and then you have two subclasses. In that two subclasses, one needs to be either handled or thrown and one doesn't. And you will learn as you use them. Like I can't remember all of them. I definitely know arithmetic doesn't need to be, index out of bounds doesn't need to be, illegal argument, because we've used them. That's why I know. But I definitely know that you have to handle the exception class because it's at the top. There, it hasn't even been subdivided yet. So make sense? So you have to know. Therefore, I asked you to throw an exception object in the exam because I wanted to see the throws clause. But some of you may have got that error, or I don't know, you changed it from exception to illegal argument exception. And you were okay. You didn't have to add the throws clause. So see there, now I'm stuck here. I've asked you something, you don't do it, then either I kind of dock off 2 marks from your method, which I don't want to, like, you know what I mean? Like, but then you're trying to be smart either way, you know? So, but I was stuck. Now I have to be careful. You're not following instructions. You're doing it in another way, but not following my instruction. So you've kind of missed some part of the requirement. And that some requirement was the throws clause here. Throws clause here, and any method that uses this method has to use it. Has to again throw it. For example, let's see. Suppose equals was calling, I'm just writing it. Or here, right? See here. If I don't put this, it will give me an error. Why? Because you'll say, why is it doing it? Because you're throwing it. Or if you use a method, this one is actually doing it. So let's not use this one. Let's use a better example. Oh, they're all throwing them. But any method that calls this method will also have to, okay, add stock. Okay, add stock. Let's see add stock. For the heck of it, just for the heck of it, let me call add stock in my constructor. I'm just doing it just to show you. Let me call add stock here. I don't have to, but I'll throw it here. As soon as I do, oh, it's already throwing it. And I remove this. I'll get a problem. It will say, oh, set quantity is throwing an exception. You'll say, I'm not throwing any exceptions here. Why is it complaining? It's complaining because you're calling methods that are throwing exceptions. So you have to remember the rule. If a method throws an exception, you have to add it to the signatures. If required, again, if required. One rule. The second says if a method is using a method that throws an exception, it also has to add it to its signatures, right? Yes, Jasjit. Go ahead.
But we can use my exception in the overriding method, right?
No, we cannot. In overriding methods, you always have to remember that the signatures must match the signatures of the parent class. So if I put throws after it, I am not overriding it. So I can't say override. Therefore, I have to change from toString to patient information or student information, whatever you do. That was the reason. Why did I simply say override the toString method? Because it was using the average. Average was throwing an exception. So then you would all be stuck. What's going on? So I changed them. Then there was no problem. So if you override a method, then the signatures of the methods must exactly match the signatures of the parent. And toString doesn't have a throws clause in the object class. It doesn't. So I can do it. So then you'll say, what do I do? Change the name. Don't override toString, just call it something else. Student information. Don't do it like, it's not like I'm still giving the information. I've just not called it toString, I've called it student information. But there will always be a method in your class that will give back a neat and clean representation of your object because you would like to see it. You would like to see it, right? There will almost always will be, and therefore we say override the toString method. But it may not happen, and if it does, if you can do it, then all you have to do is think of something else. And what's that something else? That something else is so easy. Just give it a different name. See, if I try to do it, where's my toString? Here is my toString. Let me try to just do it. It will come up with an error. It says this method is not overridable. ToString in product cannot override the ToString in object because that method doesn't throw an exception. So I have to change its name. Even this will do. Right? Oh, then I don't need, of course, I can't write this one. Even this will do. But you can't use the same name because of this extra signature. And therefore, in the midterm, I said, call it student information. The purpose was the same. You were showing the name of the student and the average mark. That was information enough. That's all I needed. So it may not happen that you're returning every instance variable. You could be returning something. I returned the name of the student, and instead of returning all the marks, I returned the average mark. I'm still returning information, right? But you can do this. So that's why you have to kind of be careful of what you can override and what you can't. Oops, what happened here? I can't remember now. Must have done something here. Okay, there it is. Okay, so that's your product class. Now, the aim is to use this class or the objects of this class to create an inventory. That's what I have to do. So what is an inventory? Think of it. What is an inventory? What is an inventory? It's nothing but collection of products, where each product has an ID, has a name, how much in stock, which is its quantity, and what is the price. So now I need to kind of create a table in which I'll be keeping these records, right? And each record will have 4 columns. So if you want to relate it to relational database, just if it makes it easy for you. So what will I need? I will need an array list in which I can keep what kind of product? Objects, product objects. And then what will I do with it? I should be able to add a product. Think of what do you do with the table. Same thing in relational database. You select, you insert, you update, you delete, right? 4 operations, same thing here. I would like to add a product. I would like to maybe, I'm not stocking that product anymore. I'm not selling it. I would like to delete a product. I would like to find a product, selection. Maybe I want to find a product whose ID is 5. I can do finding by ID. I can also do finding by name. I may be interested in all those products in which price is greater than 10. All I have to do is now is instead of using SQL statements, I'll use Java. But I have to do the same thing. Right? So there you have your select statement, your update, your delete. Now I have to write those methods myself. So I'll write an add product method. I'll show you. You can write an update. So we don't call it update, but we can say update. You want to change the quantity. What is it? It's like update. You're changing the quantity. What is your method? Set quantity. That's like your update. Right? I'm trying to search for something. Find. How will I find it? I'll have to go through the list and find a product. I'll either match it on ID because IDs are unique, or maybe I'll find it on name. I can find a product by name also. It may not be, I will get a whole list. Maybe 10 products are called the same, though usually they aren't, but maybe they're all called keyboard, 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 keyboard. But usually there will be a difference. There will be something, but you can always find all products by the same name. You can even do that. So now all that you do in SQL, so what is an array list? You can think of an array list like a table. It's like a table in a database. What does it have? Records. What does each record have? Attributes. So what did you do? You first defined your record. You defined a table called product in which you keep your attributes, instance variables. And then what will you create? You will add. You will insert them into your array list. An array list is a representation of a table if you think of it. Dynamic in nature. And you keep adding to it. You can get it to look at it. You have a get method. You can search for something. You can delete it. There is a remove method in an array list. So you have add, you have remove, you have get, you have remove all. You can find the size. How many? Count. How many in my table? Remember, you get select count function. You can do everything now. The only thing is you can't use those select, update, and delete verbs or statements, but you will have to write them in Java. If you can make that, if that helps making the connection. So now my next job is to create a class that can create a table of this sort. I'm only defining, I'm giving definitions. So somebody has already given that definition. They're called select definition. They're called insert. They're called update in MySQL. Now I'll have to create this definition myself. And then in the application, I can use them. Add, insert, remove, I can use them. Think of it like that. That's all you're now doing. So my next job is now to create a inventory or stock manager or whatever you would like to call it class. And in that class, I will write the CRUD methods myself. How do I add? How do I update? How do I delete? How do I search? And then once that class is ready, then you can write an application that can use that class, which you actually do in your MySQL statements. So you can kind of think of somebody has written the search, somebody has written the inserts, and somebody has, that code is written for you. Somebody has written that code, right? And you use it. Now you will first write it, and then you will use it in your application. So that's my next step. To write now, how will I able to work with an inventory or a stock manager or whatever you would like to call it. Okay? Because I've called it product stock, because I've called my project product stock, I'll stick to stock manager, but of course you can always change it. I just had stock in my mind. You can go inventory, doesn't matter if that makes more sense to you. Okay, that's my next step. Any questions on what we've done in product class? Anything that's not clear? I'm assuming that if you're all here after the midterm, that means you really want to go on with the course. You know what I mean? People who have thought otherwise may have dropped it, or who don't care may are not attending class. But I'm assuming that now these students really want to go forward, are trying their best. So if there is anything that is still not clear, ask, and I can clarify it for you. Good? Okay, so now the next job, to create a class called inventory or stock manager or whatever you would like to call it. Okay?
And this same project stock Tuesday?
This is Tuesday, yeah, the one on Tuesday, right? So we are going to create, oh, why do I have this red in my product? Oh, I missed something, right? What was it? What was I doing here? This was my equals method. It's giving me an error. Let's see what the error, let's save it. No, it's not. Okay, I thought like, why is it showing an error? It isn't showing an error. Maybe when I was making those changes or whatever, right? So the product class is ready. All extra that I added from the Blackboard to this class is this. I only added a statement saying, oh, before you compare, see if it exists. And what I'm doing here, basically, I am comparing the IDs. So two products are equal for me. The two products are equal for me if their IDs are the same. That's when two products are equal. And this will help me. I can search, is there a product with that ID? I can do it. It will help me. This method will help me. That's why I've written this method. Okay. So I'll use this method in my stock manager or in my inventory manager. Okay. You'll see its use. Not right now, maybe, but you will see its use. Okay. So now let's start writing a new class in the same package. So go new, go Java class, and call it whatever you like. I'm calling it stock manager. And is it going in the right folders and everywhere? Yes, it is. Please do a favor, remove this crap right from the top. Some of you don't even remove that license information. It's so irrelevant. It just sits there. How untidy is that? Think of it, if you are a user and you want to buy something or you want to look at something, when you have all your requirements. Oh, it should be this color. It should not look like this. It should not be untidy. You think of 1,001 things. Then why do you give something like untidy work to me? I'm not expecting it from you. Why should I look at all this untidy comments which don't even make sense? Okay, so please see that whatever you submit is neat and clean. Okay, so what does it do? Let's kind of fill it up. This class simulates. It's not going to, like, it's just simulating it, right? Or defines, you can say. It's basically simulating an inventory or a stock, right? Whatever you would like to call it. We use inventory. This class simulates an inventory of products. That's what it does. Of course, this definition has to be technical. We are talking about, these are for, this is not what the user sees. This is me seeing it, right? Okay, right? So that's what it does. So what does it do? It simulates an inventory. So it kind of stocks up products. That's what this helps you to do. So you can add products. So you can add, you can say products can be added, can be searched for, can be added, can be updated, changed, can be deleted, You can do all this, whatever you like. You are creating an inventory. Think of the operations in the inventory. You should be able to add a product. You should be able to delete a product. You should be able to change the information in a product. That's all you do, right? You should be able to search for a product. Sometimes, many times when you go to a store and you can't find something, you ask somebody's help and he says, okay, let me check up if we have that in stock. What is he doing? He's basically going to his computer and looking up the database, right? So we are kind of simulating a database here. Of course, it's nowhere near to a database. We are just talking of an array list in which we'll be keeping our information. But this, all you have to do is, instead of working with an array list, you can now you could be working with a database at the back end. But the operations will still hold. Okay? Okay, so this class simulates an inventory of objects of the product class. Products can be searched for, added, deleted, updated, and so on. Or you can say product information, or products can be searched for, added, changed, deleted. Like, and I'll add more if I do more work. Right? So the author is, don't give your name that's saved on your machine. Be kind enough to give me your proper name, please. And the date, there is no date. You can use a since if you like. You can use a version if you like, whatever you like. So this is July 11 today. And if you want, you can give it a version number. So when I ask for the minimum, I'm asking for a purpose of the class. I'm asking your name and I'm asking the date. But there is no at date. These are Java doc comments. You have to follow the annotations that are available. Date is not available. There is nothing called date. So that's a wrong comment. That's a wrong Java doc comment, right? So you can put your dates in either your since, that's one option, or you can put them in version. And you just have to follow them. You can't make this authors. That's incorrect. There is no at authors. It is called author. And you just say comma and you put the name of the other author. Okay? And then version could be 1.0 or whatever. Like, I'm just giving you the option. So what does this class inventory or whatever you called it does? It creates an inventory of products. That's what it does, right? I've just said objects of the product class because I'm going to use the product class. But then I write generally, products can be searched for, added, changed, and deleted from the inventory, you can say. So you can use in, or let's say searched for, added, changed, and deleted in the inventory. Okay. So we'll try to write all these methods so that then you can use them in your mail. So whoever is using the application now can write an application. Okay, so let's start. So the first method I'm going to write, you will say, will it need a constructor? If you don't write a constructor, there is a default constructor anyway. But if you want a constructor and you want to do something in it, you could do it. But for me, there is not much I would like to do in it, but still, what do I need? Where am I going to save my products? So start defining your instance variables. When you think of an inventory, what comes to your mind? A collection. Inventory will have a collection, right? You need to save your products somewhere. It could be a table in a database. It could be a file, or it could be an array list. We haven't yet gone to files and databases. We are still stuck on using what is provided in the language as per se like this. So I'm going to use a array list. It needs to be private, right? We don't show our data to anybody. We give an interface and you can look at it. So it's a private array list. And what is the type? What is an array list? What will it contain? It will contain products. So the element, each element is a product element. That's the collection. Again, please keep in mind an array list is a collection of objects. You could be putting just integers in it. All you have to do is use the integer, capital I integer class. You could be putting floats in it. It is then the type is float with a capital F. Every basic data type in Java has a corresponding class. So if you want to create a list of numbers, if those numbers are integer, create an array list of integer. If those numbers are real values, create one of float or double, whatever you like. If it is a list of big integers, use the big integer class. They're all available. Now what I want is, I want a collection, but I want to save product information. What is the type of each record in your table? Product. And what is this? ID, description, quantity, price. You've grouped it together into an entity called product. You've called it product. So you say my array list is a collection of product objects. That's why you say product. And you can call it whatever you like. I have chose to call it stock. Again, inventory, whatever you like. And there it is. And of course, the array list is not, you'll have to import it. So we'll go Alt Enter and say add import. There it is. Anything else that I need in stock? So when you think of a stock, an inventory, you say, oh, nothing, is just a collection. Do I need anything else? You say, how many products do I have in stock? I can always find out from the stock.size. I don't have to need a variable for it. You can say, anything else I need? I don't think so, but if you will add it, but I don't think so right away that I need. Okay, so that's all I need as an instance variable. So start putting comments here. Usually comments for instance variables are put in front, like where you kind of declare them. Don't do your new here. Now, so I said the use of a constructor is to initialize the instance variables. I only have one instance variable here. What do I do with it? I need to create it. I need to initialize it. So create your constructor for this method. Now I've started writing non-technical terms, like I'm now, because these comments the user can see in the API. The class description is not a big thing, but now the constructor, right? Oops. That's what it does. That's all it does. There are no params. There is no, I mean, of course, it doesn't have a return type. Okay, I don't need any params. Params are required when you want to initialize your instance variables with a value. So when an inventory is created for the first time, if the list is empty, like it's empty, we are just saying, oh, I need a room. You know what I mean? Like I need a room to stock my products. Think of it that way. I need a room. It has nothing in it, but I need a room. So you need a table, but the table is empty. There's nothing. You are just creating the table. Think of it like creating a table. Okay. So what do you do in the constructor? All constructors have to be public. Do not have a return type, have the same name as the name of the class. And their job is to take some parameters and use them to initialize the. So what do I need to do? You'll take your stock. An empty table is being created. I'm creating a table, right? So think, I don't know. I was just trying to figure out how I would make it easy for you to make a connection, because most of you do relational database well. You understand it. And here you're kind of finding difficulty. So maybe if I try to make the connection, it will make more sense. I don't know. I'm just trying. Okay. So you want to go new array list product and call the constructor. I'm calling the constructor. There, I'm calling the constructor. I think it gives you a warning saying product is not required. Redundant type arguments. It just says you don't have to give this. I don't know why, but I should. Like it's working like this also. I think maybe when you add into it, it will automatically assume, or not assume. It will automatically infer that you're trying to add products. Right? So you know what? I don't know, like this is kind of, I would always like to specify, but I mean, if it's giving a warning, then it's not something that's my preference, right? Maybe they've put something in the new comments that I'm not aware of. It permits all elements, including null. Let me see the size and all these methods. Is it saying? So there's a capacity. Capacity means with what will you will start, but that doesn't matter to you. You can add as much and you can delete. You can always increase the capacity by using a different constructor. I'm trying to see that why doesn't it? It's giving a warning. It's not saying you can't do it, but it's just giving a warning. Constructs an empty list with an initial capacity of 10. Constructs a list containing the elements. Construct initial. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to read a little more about it. And this behavior has changed like after 5 for sure. Maybe they don't need to anymore. So I'll read about it and let you know. See how they say E here for the element types. But when I try to do it in NetBeans, it gives me an warning. It just says use the diamond operators. You know what? I'll try something. Give me a minute. We'll know for sure. Can I say stock dot add? It's a method, right? A value 1, for example. That's an integer. Oh, let me remove it from here also. What isn't it like now? Illegal start of type. Ah. Okay, so here you have to, and then you don't have to. That's no, it's still giving. Why is it saying illegal start? When I remove this, that means I don't even have to say this, maybe. Okay, you don't even have to say. No, it's still giving me a warning. Field stock can be final. Okay, that's just helping me to say something. Okay, now if I do this, I'm adding an integer. I'm trying to see, can it allow me, does it allow me to do something like silly? Does it also allow me to add something like a 1.2, which is a double? Oh, that means an array list now can be a collection of different elements. So you don't have to say, I'm only going to save integers in it or floating is in it. You could do anything. Can I also do this then? So they're giving you more flexibility. That means you can create a collection of different elements. So can I also do something like this? I'll add my name, which is a string, right? Okay, that's what has happened. Array list can now be a collection of different elements. I'll stick to my product because I won't do it, but this is allowed. It's not giving me an error at all. So what do? You don't mention the type anywhere, and you can put whatever you like inside the list. So, which is, in a way, you'll say it's flexible. In the other way, I would say it's not being strict. And if I want to make it strict, then I should not be adding any. So if I want to make it strict, then I should be doing this. So if I do this, so strict means I can only add products in it. Let's try. Let's see if this makes, yeah, now it will start giving problems. So making it this way, declaring it with the angular brackets and telling the type makes it strict, right? And without that, it just says you can add anything. I don't know. I'll stick to my strict behavior. I like to use straightforward strict behavior so that then it saves me from, then it will help me catch errors. I shouldn't be able to add anything else in that table which can only store products. Okay, so I'll stick to this. I know it's giving a warning, but I'll stick to this. So it comes up with an error. It says you can't do this because you can't add a 1 to something that's a collection of products. Okay, guys, so I'll stick to that. So I see why it is giving me that warning. It gives that warning so that, like, and you don't have to mention product here again because you've already kind of said it is a product here. You don't have to mention that. But when you declare it, please see that you give it a name here, then it will be strict. Then at least you can't add anything that you want in the array list. So I'll stick to it, okay? I mean, here I can kind of ignore it. Here it's not so important for me because it will automatically infer it from my declaration. But in declaration, I'm not using it. It's just me. I mean, I think that's a better behavior. Like JavaScript, right? It's not a strict language. You can create variables on the fly. You can change the type of variables and so on. As an application programmer, I just don't like to work that way. I want the language to, I want whatever I use to be strict so that I don't make mistakes in my code. It's another way of saying you don't make mistakes in your code. So choose whatever you like. But of course, if you would like to write robust programs where it catches all your errors and takes care, I'll stick to this. So I'll ignore that warning, okay? Here I don't have to say it. It really is not required because it automatically picks up that definition. That's all you have to do in the constructor. That's all you have to do in the constructor. So what did you do? You say, why do we need to do this? Because remember, all you have done is you have declared that I will need a list or a stock, an array list. That's all you've done. You've declared it. Its initial value is null. It is not defined. You've just declared it. Declaration is different from definition. Here, you have defined it now. You've defined it. You've said, please give me an object that can store products. So there is a difference between now, as I said, a couple of you, not couple, maybe 4 or 5 students kind of, they go here, new here itself. That's not the norm in Java. You don't go is equal to new in your declaration in Java. That's just defining your instance variables. It's not incorrect. It will work. It has been initialized, but it's not how it is done here in Java, right? So I won't do it here. I won't follow practices that are not, which are not a practice. So in my constructor, I only have 1 instance variables. I don't need any parameters. I don't need any parameters because there's nothing else to initialize. If I had, I would pass them as parameters. Always think, what is the method expecting? Something from you with which it can work. Is the get method expecting something from you? No, parameter list is empty. Does the set method expect something from you? Yes, the value to be set. We'll need a parameter. Does the constructor expect something from you? Yes, will depend upon your instance variables. I don't have any. I just have an array list. But you could always do this. You'll say, oh, when I buy a room to keep my inventory, I'm going to stock it as soon as I buy it. Then if you need to stock it as soon as you buy it, then I'll pass that stock that you want into my list. I'll pass the list to you. And then I'll initialize your stock. I can do that. What doesn't it like here now? Illegal start of type. Illegal start of type. What doesn't it like? Illegal start of type is not making any sense at all. Unless it wants a type here. Okay, see, now this is confusing. Where does it want a type and where doesn't it want a type? So I'll stick to my types. Then I don't have to bother. I can live with warnings, but I cannot work with errors. Right? So it was saying illegal start of type was not making any sense at all. That wasn't helpful. The error message was not helpful. But I put it in and it starts to run. Right? So I'll stick to it. So you could do this. Oh, so sorry. So not the new now. Of course, not the new. So you're saying when I create a stock and inventory table, I'm putting some values into it straight up. So you could do this. You could get that values. You will pass an array list to this constructor, and that will take that array list and put it in your stock. You'll say, why don't I need a new here? Assignment automatically creates a new. That's what an assignment does. So if you have to put into an array list something, it will automatically create it and then assign. So I don't need a new first. I don't need it. New first creates it and does it. It's not required. Right? You could have done something like this. I just chose not to. Because I'm saying I'm just now trying to create an inventory. To begin with, my inventory is empty. There's nothing in my inventory. So I go with the statement on line 2. I don't pass it again. So a few students had chosen to do this. They were passing the marks of the student also as a parameter. I kind of gave them marks here and there as long as it was right. You know what I mean? Like if they have done it correctly, they verified that all the marks are between 0 and 100. Just not an assignment statement. It had to be set properly. Here there is no big deal. I'm not doing anything with that. There is nothing under it. But the problem could be this array list that you passed to me has products and the IDs in those products are same. They are duplicates. I can't allow that. I've said my inventory can only have unique IDs. So I write an add method that will take care that I do not add duplicate products. So this is for my application, this is not the right way. Otherwise I'll have to check. I just can't do this. I'll have to do a validation. Pick up one product at a time from my stock, check its ID, see it's not a duplicate, and then assign it to my. So it's more work. Why would I do it? Right? So it won't work for me because my products have to be unique. And who's going to check this? It's better just to start like this and then add, and the add method will check. Okay? Okay, so that's what I need to do. This is the right way, at least in my application, to do it. Okay, because there are things to be validated. And similarly, in your exam also, the student mark had to be validated. You just can't say, oh, I'm getting a list, I'll use it. Are you ensuring that the data in the list is correct? If not, then you're not doing the job correct. If you are, then it's fine. You get something, you check it's fine, and then you put it in your list. So why do more work? Right? So this is your constructor. That's all I need to do in the constructor. So I say the constructor creates an empty list to store products. Now we will start to write our methods. Search, add, which is insert, right? Update, calling the set method, for example. And how will I call it? Anytime now you have to kind of make a connection. You could add new records, that's easy. You could search for products, you know how to do that. You could delete a complete product, we know how to do that. Anytime you want to sell, you will have to call the sell method of the inventory. The inventory will call the sell method in the product and the product will be sold. So now here comes the question, where should I keep my methods? Does sell belong to the product class or does sell belong to my stock class? In a way, it belongs to my product class because when you sell, what changes? quantity changes. So you're changing an attribute. So you write a cell there, you will call it from the cell here. So you have to make connections. So cell is kind of your updating. When you sell something, quantity changes. Can you update the ID? No, there will be no. You can do it. Remember, there is a private. It was a private method there. Can you change the description? No. Can you change the quantity? Yes, there is a set quantity there. Can you change the price? Yes, there is a set method. So you can update fields. You can update. You can add records. You can delete records. You can sell, and by that default will change the quantity. And that's what we have to learn how to do. Okay? We'll take a break here and then come back in 20 minutes and continue. Are we okay? Right? So we'll complete this class when we come back. So I have not done anything much in this class, so I'm not putting it on Blackboard right now. I will when I'm done. I'm finished. Okay? Take a break and come back, guys, in 15 minutes. I doubt. I doubt we'll have time. I don't want to leave it in between. Then again, it takes me time to get back to it. Okay, so I doubt if there will be any.
Just a quick question.
Yeah, no problem.
For example, you were saying here that if we were using this as a parameter
Yeah.
inside here, then we should use this.
Yes.
But you're not using this because this is more effective.
Not more effective. When you start with an inventory, there is nothing in the inventory.
Yes.
So your list is empty. So that would be a better way.
Oh,
That's making an empty list. Or you will say, no, I have to start an inventory, but I already have some stock. Then you will pass that stock as a parameter, and then you will initialize it in your inventory. So you're basically, when you pass a parameter, you're already inserting some records. You're passing that records, and then you're putting it in your table. So that does a double job. So are we passing something and then putting it, or are we just starting with an empty list? Now, when I pass something, then I have an additional thing to do. I've said that every product in my table should be unique. So when you pass me a stock, already some products, I'll have to check each one of them to see that they are unique, and then I can add it. I'll just have to do more work.
okay.
So why don't I just start with an empty list, and then whenever I want to add a record, I hit the add button, and the add button will do the validation. I can do that. I'll show you if you want. It's not a big deal. It's more work.
Yeah, no, it was.
Yeah, but it's a way
just
of
to
thinking,
verify
yeah.
Your way of.
Are you starting with an empty room and you will now stock? Or you are starting with the room, you already have something in stock and you put it when you create your inventory.
Okay.
That's the difference. Okay?
Thank you.
No problem.
So, are we on break now?
Yes, we are on break now till 12:35.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. so noisy today.
Yeah,
Oh, it's so disturbing.
I think they're completely renovating
Something in E, yeah. That's why my database class shifted from E, but no, it's somewhere here in this building.
Well,
Maybe something temporary, but I don't know.
it's right below us, like I was walking past and they have all the tiles torn out of the room beneath us.
It's difficult to concentrate when
Yeah.
talking class. Yeah. Okay, guys, let's continue that. People can join in as they, it's already time, right? Okay, so we'll start writing our methods. We'll do selects, adds, deletes, updates, whatever, and call them whatever works, right? So this method searches a product by ID. Now, when you search for a product, you could be searching by ID, you could be searching by name, who knows? You know what I mean? You could be doing anything, or you could be searching by quantity. Like there could be various ways of searching. But when you search for a product, you would usually use the primary key. That is, you search by ID. So let's try to do that, okay? So this method searches a product by ID. So you're going to provide the ID, the product ID to search for. Okay, so as I said, I mean, I could write as many as I want, but I'm just trying to, we usually search on IDs because ID is unique. It's like a primary key. But again, search can be done for others. I can do a search by name. And now if the names are duplicates, I could be getting a whole complete array list back. Okay, so let's look for, I'm going to write a public method. Now there are a few options here. So when you search, do you want to say yes, got it or not got it? You could be a Boolean, yes or no. Or you could be giving me the whole record back like you do in the database, right? So you can say select star, or you can say select what you want to return back. So here we have two options. We could either say return a true or a false, or if you're searching for something, we are saying give me the product back. So the return type would be a product. See what I mean? So again, depends. How do you want to write your search method? So when you're looking for a product, when you're searching for the product, you're saying, give me the product back. Like you do a search in your relational database. You say select star from, and it kind of gives you that row. It displays that row for you. Definitely this will not display the row, but you get it back and you can display it in your application. Okay, so what do we want to do? You can call it whatever you like. We can say find product. Right? Or you can say search product, and it requires an ID from you. So I'm searching by ID. Okay, this is the one with ID. Again, I could give it a name, find product by ID, or I'm going to overload it because I'm writing more than one finds. I can say find the product by ID. I can say find the product by name, find the product by quantity. Like think of it, your where condition. It could be anything. So I'm going with ID because we usually search on primary keys. Okay, what do you want to do logically? How will you search for something in your records? What should you do? You have some records, or you have some products in your array list. You want to go one by one from the beginning. Oh, is the ID same? Yes. Here, get it back. Return it. That's all you need to do. So you can stop at the first instance where you find it. With ID, of course, the IDs are unique. So you'll only have a instance. With name, it could be, you may have more than one. Again, you'll have to say, oh no, names will always be unique. You can do that too. But anyway, so when I do, I use a for loop, use a for each loop. What do you have to search for? In the list, what is coming out of the product? Let's say P is coming out of the product. From which list? From the stock list. So you have to traverse your list, right? If you are looking for something, so if I say, oh, I'm looking for student number 1, and I don't know which one is. So I'll start asking Bradley. Bradley, I use student number. Is your ID 1? He'll say, no, I'll go to Tyler. Is your ID 1? No. I'll go to Easy. No. And I'll kind of go. So I'm asking each one. And as soon as I find it, suppose Cheston says, yeah, my ID is 1. Why would I ask the others? Because no two students can have the same ID. So I'm going to traverse the list. So if you want, you can put comments for yourself. Traverse the list. Stock, right? That's what you're traversing. Okay, so start. How do you traverse? You use a for each loop. You can use a normal for loop, but again, don't do work where you can do it much easier. There is a for loop that does it for you, a for each. Why would you say start from the first position, stop when you find it, increment it? Don't worry about it. We'll do a return right away, right? So do things that make sense and are easy to do. And of course, they're correct. Easy doesn't mean they're not correct. They should be efficient. Okay, what do you have to do? You have to compare. If the ID that you have sent you is the same as the ID of this product that I'm getting out of the list. So how do you get this ID? You use the get ID method of your product. And it is a string. You can't use equals. It is a string. What must you do? Equals, ignore case. Why ignore case? Because it is a string. And what do you have to compare it with your ID? See how many are missing. That's 1. Oops. Get the ID, compare it with, okay, there. Don't worry about that red squiggles because I don't have a return statement. See what I have done. I took out one product from the stock. I get its ID. If that ID equals the ID that I'm looking for, I'm using equals ignore case. It is a method in the string class for comparing two strings without case sensitiveness, right? I can't use two equals here. If I use two equals, I'm actually comparing their addresses. You can't use the equal to operator here for objects. When you use the equal operator in objects, it compares the addresses where they are sitting, not their contents. I want to compare the contents. You can do it using the equals method or the equals ignore case method. I'm going with the equal ignores case because case is not important for me, right? If that's the case, that means I found it, right? What should you do? Just return that product. You're right. Your pointer is right on that product. Just return it. Return that information. So you can kind of think of it as if it was displayed on the screen. If not, now there are two options. Now here is the option. If you didn't find it, you can either throw an exception saying the product is not available. It's not in stock. It's just not listed. It's not in my stock, right? Or you can return a null. Why? Because my return type is a product. So now this will depend. What do you want to do? Do you want to just throw a message, which is good enough? Right? You can say the product is not listed, is not present in the inventory, or is not present in stock. Please remember there's a difference between the product not being in stock and not present in stock. Not in stock could mean the quantity is 0, right? Or when, so be clear in your message. So you could do two things. You have an option of returning null if you like. What does the return null do? The return null, since you couldn't find it, the whole list, oops, sorry, not here. I'm so sorry, not here. This will come after here. Right? It will come after. That means I couldn't find anything. That's one way of doing it. Let's try if I can do this. It may not be possible because I have a return type of product, but I'm just thinking. Or I can throw an exception. I can say throw. Since I have that my exception class, I'll just use it, okay? I'm not sure because sometimes it will say, oh, you need, because I mean, not sometimes it is because I don't have a return type. I'll say throw new, I know it's kind of, you can say product is not stocked and you can say invalid ID, something like that, right? This product is not stocked. Yeah, no, it's giving a problem. It needs a return state. You know what? I don't know. It will say, let's see. Oh yeah. Let's add here. I'm just trying to see if I don't want to return a null. Can I do this? I'm hoping, but I'm not sure because you'll see you already have a return statement. But see, this return statement is with an if. So sometimes it will complain. Oh, it's okay. So you have two options. You can either, so it's working. There is no syntax error. I was trying to see if it will say, no, you need a return statement because this return was inside an if. If can happen or may not happen. You know what I mean? Like whatever. But there it is. So you have two options in this method. You could choose to return null if you like, because null is a valid value for product. Product is an object and null is a valid value for any object. Or you could throw a message. You could throw back this exception saying this product is not stocked, right?
If I could just say line 28.
Line 28?
Yeah, for the public. Okay.
Yeah, I have to add this. If I throw it, I have to add it.
Okay, thank you.
Because I've thrown a my exception.
Just trying to make sure that I got it on the right.
Yeah. Okay. There's only a constructor. So you have this option. You can, if you found it, of course we are returning it. And see, I've stopped at the first found. I don't go to traverse the whole list. I only stop where I find. So return helps me. I don't have to use a Boolean variable. I don't have to use a for loop with starting I equal to 0. I don't have to do all this. I just put a return statement. And that's absolutely valid and correct. So I'm saying, look for it. Are you the first one? No. Are you the second one? No. Are you the third one? Yes, return. Finished. It doesn't check the whole list. It doesn't need to. That would be inefficient. That you find it and you're still searching it. So as soon as you find it, return it. Your job is done. Now the option of what do I do if I don't find it? There are two options. One, you can just return a null value and it's absolutely correct. There is nothing wrong in returning a null value because null is a valid value for a object and product is an object. Your return type is product, which is an object. Or two, if you like, you can throw a message And again, remember, this message will not come on the screen. You will have to catch it in your application and then show it to the user. So there are two options. Whatever you choose, they're both correct, will depend upon what I'm asking. I say I need to return null if it was not found, you will use a return null statement. If I say return an exception object, then you will use a throws. Right? So both are equally correct. They're both equally correct. There's nothing wrong in it. So I found my product. It's like your select star from table where ID is equal to whatever you give it. Make sense? So I've done a search. Now try to do a search by name. We'll do the same thing. Of course, here, so I'll keep it find product, but instead of here, name is also a string, right? Oops. I can't do it. I can't overload it. Do you know why? Because the signatures this has to be different. Now my ID is also a string and my name is also a string. So I can't overload it. In overloaded methods, the sequence or the type of parameters have to be different. Either the sequence is different, int, double int, or the type. If there's only one, then the type has to be different. I can't overload this method in this class because there is no difference. There is only one parameter. One takes an ID and one takes a name, but they are both strings. So you know what? Then let's do this. It's better than to call it find product by ID, just because it makes more sense, right? And call this find product by name. So here is somewhere where I wanted to overload it. Why? Because find product is find product, doesn't matter, but it wouldn't because my signatures were different. So here by name, let's go by name. And I'll stop at the first instant. And you can write, you can say, and this method searches a product by name, and you can say returns the first match. Because it may happen that you have the same name for more than one product. So we've not said that the name is unique, right? Though I doubt that inventory will have the same names. But I'm just kind of, I don't know. I've never worked in an inventory. How about any of you? Have you worked in an inventory like a store? Have you worked with something like a database where it can be different? I don't know. I'm not very sure. If names are same, then I could have a list that matches it. You know what I mean? So I'm looking for a keyboard and I say, show me all keyboards. So maybe description. Description may not be unique or whatever. So I'll show you both ways. So therefore I've said this method searches a product by name, returns the first match if found, right? So here, oh, sorry, my add return is also missing. I'm so sorry. Can you come back here, please? Do an add return. What does it return? The product if found. And it has a throws also. I'm so sorry, I forgot all those. If I don't write them, then it's incomplete. What does it throw? It throws my exception if the product is not found. Now keep in mind, if I was using null, I would have said here, return the product if found, and here in comments, I would have said null if not found. If I was saying return null, it will change. There won't be a throws clause. So depending upon what you're doing, your comments may change. I'm doing a throws, so I'm saying add throws if the product is not found. If you were returning a null, you would say return the product if found, null if not found. Okay, so they have to match what you're doing. So I'm doing this in my methods. Okay, so that's now we'll take these two and also put it in the other one. Here. So what is the param here? The param here is name. I mean, you can call it ID if you want, but like it doesn't make sense to call it ID when it is a name. Remember, we always use meaningful names, right? You're not called XYZ. You have a proper name. So we call you meaningful names. And it won't be very different, but all you have to do is you'll have to compare the name with the name. And if yes, you got it. If not, you can say this product is not stocked. It's the same thing. This product is not stocked. Doesn't matter whether you're finding it by ID or not. So please see the difference. The name had to be different. I couldn't overload it because the parameter list was the same. And overloading can only be done if the parameter list is different, right? It cannot be done if they are same. All I did was traverse the list till found. This is going to give me the first occurrence. I get the name of my product. I compare it with the name you have told me to compare. If I find it, I return it. If not, then I again have the option. I can say return null, or I can say this product is not stock. Again, two options. So this is returning me the first one that I found. Now let's do this. If I can do this, so we've completed this. Take it again. Take this one because it has everything. And I'll change. I'll write another method. This method is going to searches a product by return and returns all that match. It could be a whole list, right? So I'm looking for keyboard and I'm saying keyboard and it will give me all keyboards, a whole list. Okay, so be careful now what we are doing. So this method searches a product by name, returns all products that match the given name. So you still have a param, the product name to search for. You still have a return, but not the a product, all products, the products. And of course, if found, right? The found is important. The if found is important. And if you have to be really grammatically correct, which you should put a comma. So the products, notice the products that match. It's a list. So if I need a list that is coming back, what do I need? What is my return type? That's my return type. That's my return type. So see the difference? The difference between this method and searching by a name is basically, I don't know which one will work. So here we'll call it find products by name. There, find products by name. So that one, if you call that one, you will get the first match, only the first match, because you return. If you do this one, you will get all matches. So you don't have to return yet. Okay, we'll have to change its code. But this is the difference between the two methods. Please notice there is a difference. The first method returns you the first occurrence. You have a method in string index that returns you the first occurrence. There is another method that searches for all occurrences. That's the difference. Okay, so I'm searching for the first occurrence. I'm searching for all occurrences. So the return type, can you return a single product now? No. What do you need? A list. So your return type is a list. Now you have to do what? You'll have to create your own local array list. So you'll have to create a local array list of type product. This is something you will use. Okay? So you can call it temporary if you like. You can call it list if you like. You can call it whatever you like. I'll call it product list. Go with a new, create a new one. It's like a temporary variable. Okay, it's like a temporary variable. If you want to save something, I need it. Okay. We'll need an array list, a temporary array list. I've called it product list just because I couldn't find another name, but that's okay. It's a product list anyway, right? Create a local variable. This is your local variable. Now, when you find it, what should you do? If you found something, just add it to your local list. Take your local list and add it. Just P to it. Here. So look at the code now. What have I done? I've traversed the list for all occurrences, right? So I'm not stopping in between. I've gone through the whole list. If the name matches the name you've given me, I'm going to add it to this local list. I'm going to add it to this local list. So what am I creating? A list. It could be only one value. I don't know. I may not have even one, but it's a list. And then when I'm done, what will I be returning? Return the product list. Oops. There. And again, you have an option. You can either return null, and now it doesn't like something. Unreachable. See, now it's kind of, that's what I said. Sometimes it will complain and sometimes it won't. What can I do? This time I'll have to return a null because it's not, it's saying this statement is, you see why it is saying unreachable? The difference is the first one was inside a for and an if. It may happen or it may not happen. So it was okay. But now when I say return, it will always happen. Even if it is empty, it will happen. So it says if I'm returning, how can I throw an exception now? See the difference between the two? The first one was inside of if. It was saying if. So the compiler said, oh, it may or it may not happen because it is an if. It understands that, right? So it wasn't complaining. But this statement will always happen, always. Since it will always happen, this code is unreachable. You can never reach this code. You'll never reach it. So I'll have to return a null here, right? So how will I have to write? I can't do it. Do you understand? I can't do it. It's not possible. But I can do it another way if you like. I can do it this way. I can put an if statement. I can put an if statement, right? What do I check? I can check if my product list, I can get around it. I mean, you can always get around things. If my product list size is not equal to 0, that means I got something. So I'm just being a little smart. I put it in an if. Now it's reachable. Because again, with if, what does it say? It may happen or it may not happen. And it's logical anyway. There's nothing wrong with it. See? So what did I do? I didn't write a plain return statement. I put it in an if and I tested its size. If its size was not 0, that means I got it. I have something in my list. I return. Else I return. I mean, the else is not necessary at all. Else say this product is not stocked, which is again a good message enough. This product is not stocked at all. So now you know what is the meaning of unreachable statement. Unreachable means if you did not have this if, then this statement was never reached. Why? Because it will return right here itself. So what did I do? And it made sense. There's nothing wrong in it. There's nothing illogical in it. It's a logical solution. I mean, I know it is an extra if, but it is an illogical. I still need it. Even if I have to return a null, I'll have to use an if. Because I'm saying if the size is not 0, return this, else return. I still have to use it. Because otherwise I can't have 2 return statements. I hope you understand that. Even if I don't do this, I still can't do this. I just can't say return this, return this. I still have to use an if statement. So logically, I have to use a if statement. You can't do without it. What I have to do is, do I throw an exception or do I return a null? And since I've chosen to throw exceptions, I'll stick to exceptions. But you have that option. So I definitely need it. I definitely need an if. I definitely need an if. So this option still remains. Right? So I'll stick with my throw. I'll stick with my throw. Notice now, if I don't put any, I'm getting a error. It's saying there is a missing return statement. Since that's an if, it may or may not happen. So what if it doesn't happen? So you'll have to put one of them for sure. You'll say, but that's not a return. But remember, I told you throw is a return. Throw is an abnormal return, but it is a return. So I can either use return null or you can use the throw, which is an abnormal return. I mean, I'm calling it abnormal because of error has occurred. It's not abnormal that it's not abnormal termination, but it's an error that has occurred. Okay, so use whatever. Again, I'm sticking to this, but again, I'm just showing this to you so that if I ask you, you know that a method can return a null value when the return type is an object. Array list is an object. Array list is an object. Return null is logical. Make sense? Does this method make sense now? The difference between this method and another is it completely uses the for loop. It's not stopping in between. There's no return statement. So it says, look at this. Does the name match? Yes. Put it in my local array list. Second, does this name match? Put it in my local array list. So you're creating a local array list. This is a local array. You could have even called it stock. Doesn't matter. Remember, when there is a local one and when there is an instance variable, the local takes over. But I didn't want to confuse you. So I called it product list, right? I said, okay, create a product list for me. It's an empty one. Start looking through the whole stock. Did you find a name that matches? Yes, add it. Add it to my list. Add. You found it. Add. Right? So if found. This is a if found. If the name matches, you add it to the list. This is your local list. I'm adding it to the local list. The add method is available. I don't have to do anything at all. And then when I come back, check. Does the list have anything, right? You can use the not empty method also. Instead of this, you can use the is empty not of it also. You can do that. So you can write it like this also. You can say, for your information, you can say if this is another way of doing it. You can use if not is empty. Whatever makes sense to you guys. You can even use this. So you can say size is not equal to 0 is same as is empty is not. If not is empty. Both will work. Both will work.
Or you could just use is empty to throw the.
Yeah, or you could use is empty. The only difference is you can use is empty to throw, then you will have to write an else. No, you don't have to. You're right. Oh, no, you don't have to, because throw means go back. Yeah, you're right. Perfectly. Henry is right. You could have used is empty and you could have thrown an exception, and then you could have just done a return. Yep. Both will work. Absolutely. Both will. As long as you use either way, it will work. Instead of saying if not product is empty, you can say if product list is empty, throw the exception. And then otherwise you will just return. Logically, it's just the same statement written in different ways. Scroll up. In the signature, throws my exception. And I've changed its name. It cannot be overloaded. The previous one was also called find product by name. So that's what it is telling me. Right? So change it. I've said find products by name. Okay? So you can return an array list too. So nothing stops you. So here is your search. You can search by ID, you can search by name, you can search by price also. Can you think, like it's just a searching, it's a where condition. In that, instead of comparing name and ID, I'll compare the price. You can search by quantity also. I can compare the quantities. Now, can you make parallel with your select statement? Select this from this where. ID is the same, name is the same, quantity is the same, quantity is greater than 10, price is greater than 100, you can do whatever you want. So you are actually writing select statements here. This is your code for select statements. Right? Okay, so I won't do any more finds, but you can do more finds. Like it's just a find. What does a find do? Go through the list, matches what you have to match, and away you go. If I was saying quantity is greater than 10, I'll instead of saying equal to, I'll say quantity greater than 10. Use whatever relational operator you have to. Right? Make sense? Okay, now let's do the next one, the add one. Okay, so the add method, now this is your insert record. Okay, I want to insert a record. So this method adds a product to the stock. Right, that's what it does, or to inventory, what you've written. Keep in mind, the product ID must be unique. You can't add something with the same key, same primary key. And you'll say, how will I take care of that? We'll see. Of course, we'll have to take care of it. Our code will have to take care of it. Somebody has already taken care of it in your SQL. Somebody has already written the insert code. If you make it the primary key, it doesn't allow you to insert it. We'll have to do that too. We'll have to write that code ourselves because you are writing it, right? You are the programmer who's creating the select statements. So now if somebody wants to use your code and write an application, you'll say, oh, how do I select by ID? They'll go and say, oh, that's the method. And they'll just use the method. So instead of the select verb, they'll use your method, find product by ID. Is it making parallel? Is it making sense for people who are still trying to figure out how to put things together? I don't know. I don't know. I can try whatever I can try. So this method adds a product to the stock. This product ID must be unique. Now, that means you will give me a product and I want to add it. So you're giving me a whole record. Insert into table values and you're giving me the values. You can't say, I'll give you the ID, insert it. What happens about the rest of the attributes of my product? So I'll have to think of either some default values or you give me the whole product. You never say, oh, here is the product ID added to your stock. Doesn't make sense. You give a product information to be added. So it needs a param. Let's call P or product, whatever you would like to call it. And this is the product to be added to stock. Right? Again, you can return a true and a false if you want. Oh, this method worked, or this method didn't work. You can throw an exception. I can't add it because the ID is not unique. Again, you can make your own choices, right? And your choices will depend upon when you are writing the application. When you are doing an assignment, it will be my choices because, of course, I'm expecting the same from everybody. So it is a public method Because I'm sticking to throwing exceptions, I'll stick to this. But you could use a Boolean value, okay? And it returns nothing. And as I said, you could. I'll show you how it can be done. What would you like to call it? Add product? Of course, you will give me a product. I've also called it product just because it's so common in Java to do it. But see, there's a difference. P with a capital product is different from P with a small product. And this is of add product. Please see that you change your methods here. I mean, you change their names here when we have copied and pasted. Your comments. I mean, those are comments. Hopefully you can do that. You can do this afterwards, but I'll do it so that I don't mess up. Anything that goes on Blackboard, I have to be very careful. Because when it comes to marks, then oh, you didn't do that, and you're expecting us to do it. Okay, now let's write the method. Now, what is your logic? Think of the logic behind it. Before inserting a record, you will have to check all the records that are already in your stock to see if this ID is not used. Only then can you have it, right? So you'll have to kind of go, that's one way of, I mean, you say, oh, that's like find a product. Can't I use find a product? Of course you can use find a product. You can, find product is doing what? Find product is finding a product by ID. So you can just pass the ID to it. If an exception is thrown, it won't be added anyway. But if something is returned, I mean, if something is returned, you know it is already there. Otherwise, an exception is there. So you can use the find method. But what I'm trying to tell you is another method. I mean, you can use the find. There's nothing wrong in using the find at all. So find, when it returns something, that means it is already present. So you will have to say, oh, did it return something? I cannot add it. Okay? But your find is throwing an exception if it doesn't find it. So your program will stop. So using find will not be useful for you here, because if you don't find it, you use the find and it is not found, the exception is thrown, the program stops. So that's not what you want to do. If it is not found, you want to do something. So what I'm going to do is this. Now I am going to use that equals method that I wrote in my program. What was that equals method doing? That equals method was returning you a Boolean value of true or false, depending upon whether you found it or you didn't find it. So I can use that now. If it was not found, I'm good, and I'll add it. If I found it, I'll throw it. Now comes that the use of that equals method. And because equals is an overloaded method, again, like toString, most classes will implement. And I needed to implement it because I wanted to take care that my ID was not used. Right? Now that's one way of doing it. But also, let me show you another way that there is another easy way of doing it. So I'm going to add a product here. And if this, so I'm basically, you'll say, how will I use the equals? Because equals requires, you're basically saying it needs two parameters. One, this dot equals what is coming in. You compare two products. Here, what am I comparing? I just have one product. And I have to compare it with each of the elements. Again, I have to use a for loop. So there's an easier way. Let me show you that easier method. You are saying if my stock contains, there is a method called contains in the array list that will automatically use the equals method to do that check for you. Go through the whole list, check and do it. So you can write your own for loop. You can say, oh, do the IDs equal? Why will I do it? Why? Because the contains already does it, right? So for your information, the contain method uses the equal method. That's why I had to write that equal method to check for product by same ID. And notice what did I check in my equals ID? If I wanted to check names, I would do names there. If I wanted to check quantity, I would do quantity there. My equals method is comparing IDs. So what am I saying? I'm saying if my stock contains this product. Now see, it's kind of using the contains method, and array list, it belongs to array list. What does it do? This is what it does. It looks at the first element of the stock and uses the equals method. And what is equals doing? Comparing the ID. No, it's not equal. Goes to the second in the stock. Goes to the third in the stock. It's doing a for in the stock and trying to find a match using the, so you'll say, where is it equals? That's what contains does. And don't take my word for it. You don't have to take my word for it. You can go to the contains method here. CC contains. It returns a Boolean value. So we'll use that Boolean value. If something gets back, that means it was present. If something doesn't get back, it's not present. You see what I mean? It returns a Boolean value. And what does it check? It returns true if this list contains the specified element. That's what it does. But keep in mind, it is very important that you have overridden the equals method in your class. Why? Otherwise, what will it do? It will use the equals method of the object class. And what does the object class equal method do? Compares the addresses. That's not what you have to do. You have to compare the IDs. So it will work. You may not have an overridden equals method and you're thinking, oh, my work it's working. It's not working. What it is doing is it is comparing two objects not by their ID, but by their addresses. So you have to override equals to meet your requirements. And what is my requirement? My IDs have to be unique. So I wrote an equals method and this is what I'll do. I'm saying if it contains it. So I'm going to say if it contains it, that means it's already present. So let's say if it does not contain it, right? If it does not contain the product, what should I do? Add it. It doesn't contain it, add it. If this product is confusing you, call it something else. Call it P if you like. But in Java, it's very common to name the object same name as the name of the class, especially in the parameter list. Not all times, especially in the parameters list. Do you see the use? Contains method of the array list. It belongs to the array list. Can you see what have I used it with? Stock dot. So stock is an array list. Contains method uses the equal method to check for product by same ID. So what are you saying? It does not contain it. What does this mean? Does not contain. This is returning a Boolean value. That's why I can do a check. So I'm saying if false. You couldn't find it. What should I do? Add it. But if you find it, then I can't add it. I can't. It's a unique ID, right? So what should you do? Let's throw an exception. Anywhere where I've used my exception here, you can use exception if you like. Because it's the same thing, right? You can use exception everywhere I've used my exception. You needn't even create my exception. I was just trying to show you maybe that week that, oh, how do you create your own exception classes? But you can use it, right? What are you going to say in the message? What do you want to say? A product by the same ID already exists. Cannot add product. That's the message you want to give to the user, right? So say. It's like getting an error on your SQL statement. Oh, since you have done here, you'll have to say throws my exception. Because your exception has extended the exception class, you'll always have to say throws my exception. If you had extended by chance the arithmetic exception class, then you wouldn't have to do this because arithmetic exceptions needn't be either caught or thrown. But I chose to do extends exception because that was the easiest to do. Because it was not an arithmetic exception I was talking about. So I didn't want to extend arithmetic exception. And again, you have two options. What isn't it like? Oh, forgot my new. Again, you have two options. You could either throw an exception or you could change your void type to Boolean. If you could add it, return a true. If you couldn't add it, return a false. Again, it depends on how you want to do it. You could always do it, right? You could. So I'll again put it, but again, it depends on you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bracket here. I'm going to put a bracket here. And if I was returning a true, I could have said return true here, right here. And here I could have done a return false. Just showing you that you can do a thing in different ways and they're completely correct. But of course, then the return type could have been, you can put a comment. You can put a comment, not in the Java docs. You could return a Boolean value if you want it. So instead of void, you will have Boolean. And then if you have a Boolean, then you will need this. I put it in quotes. I mean, I had to use brackets if there is more than one. And if you uncomment it, you can do it. It's doable. Else you will return a false. And it will work perfectly. Again, it depends on how you want to code it. Sorry? Come again?
The message is that.
His message is wrong? Oh yeah, sorry. By the same name, not be the same name. Thank you. Product by the same name already the same ID by the same ID already exists. Thank you. Cannot add product. Or product cannot be added. Whatever. Grammatically correct, simple, straight, complete. Make sense? I've added a product. This is like an insert statement. So you can only insert a product if it has a unique ID. Yes, Bradley?
I'm just trying to make sure the parentheses was the right spot because I just added the parentheses.
You match your own parentheses. This is your if.
Oh, I didn't see that. I was trying to look for it.
When you add your own, just highlight them and it will tell you a matching bracket. Okay, then you will know where you are wrong. Make sense? This is your insert. So we've done an insert. We've done a search. We've done this. Of course, we have to do delete and we have to do update, but we'll do that. Okay, let's see. What else can you do? Oh, can you get me how many? That's an easy one. How many products in stock? How many unique products in stock? That's an easy method. This method returns the number of unique products. We are not talking about quantity. We are talking about how many records in my table. Okay. Where was I? I'm writing in the table. It will return a value. You know what? It's always better to write the signature first. Then at least NetBeans helps you to write the comments. What does it return? The number of unique products in stock. There. This is an easy one. What do? It's a public method. It returns an int. Right? It's called, I don't know. What would you like to call it? Get number of products, can't think of something. But that's a good enough name. And won't need a parameter. And all you'll have to return is the size. Remember, I'm not talking about quantity. Therefore, I've said the number of unique products. How many products do you have in stock? You can say listed in stock. You can do something like which makes more sense to you. But don't say in the list or anything. Talk normal English. So what am I returning? What was the name of my stock? Dot size. Make sense? So how many records in your table is what I'm talking about. Okay. Now there could be another question. Count method. How many of this name maybe? Or what is the quantity of P1? So I want to look at this quantity. This could be another set. How many of quantity in P1? Right? Maybe I should add it with my searches. But anyway, so let's search. So how many? So I'm going to write the signatures first because it just makes it, then I can have comments. So I want to search how many. So let me say, what do I want to call it? Let's call get quantity. Yeah, we are getting the quantity, right? We are getting quantity. There is a get quantity method or there where you can get quantity by ID. You can get quantity by whatever you like. Here, let's say get quantity of product. Make sense? That's a useful method. Okay. Now, if you want to look at quantity, again, searches can be done by anything. I'll just do it by ID because it's easy. Okay. Now, if I put a comment, it kind of puts a params and returns for me. I'm just trying to be a little lazy. That's it. Right? Okay. What does this method do? This method returns the quantity in stock of a product. Oh, let's do the opposite, kind of write it correctly. Quantity of a product in stock. And remember, now we have to think, okay, what if that product is not even, quantity 0 is different, but what if that product is not even listed? Remember, find, we have to find it first. And find, if we don't find it, it will throw an exception. If it doesn't throw an exception, then we are okay. Okay, so we can use the find here. Okay, so we can take this. And it will throw an exception otherwise. So please do an add throws. Which exception? We are using my exceptions. And nobody says you have to, you can make your own subclasses also. Numeric exceptions. I don't know, what else could it be? Not found exceptions. You can make your own any exceptions that you want, just to make it for clarity. What does it throw? It throws a my exception if the product is not listed. It's not even listed. It's not in your stock. You know what I mean? I'm not saying not in stock, otherwise 0 quantity. I'm not talking about 0 quantity. 0 quantity is valid. I may have sold out everything, but I'm talking about the product is not. I mean, you're saying how many of chairs you have, whereas you don't even stock chairs. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. So my exception is the product is not listed. Okay. So now what is the ID? The product ID whose quantity needs to be checked. Right. This is the product ID whose the quantity needs to be checked. Okay, so what should be your first job? This is definitely going to throw an exception. Why? Because in a minute I'll show you why. Your first job should be to call that find method. What was it called? Find product by ID and pass ID to it. That's your first job. What will happen? If the product is not found, it is going to throw an exception anyway. Your job is done. Right? Your job is done. Now find product by ID is coming handy. Don't write the code again. Don't do it, please, because the code is already present. Whether you call it from an outside button or whether you call it from inside doesn't matter. So your first job is to find if product is stocked. First find out that, is the product stocked? I mean, is it even in my inventory? And if it is not, this will throw an exception. What doesn't it like? Oh, return the value. Okay. So this will automatically throw an exception if the product is not found. See, now it's kind of coming together. I didn't return anything from it. I threw an exception and that's what it is okay. If it was returning a null, then I would have to say, oh, if it is null and so on. It's just easier to throw an exception because that's what a class does. If I can, the class says, excuse me, the class says, if I can do the job, I will do it. That's our contract. But if you give me trash, here is the exception. So to it, it's saying, you're trying to tell me, look for a chair, whereas I only stock computers. You know what I mean? That's what it is saying. Okay. Okay. So that will automatically, you can say, we'll throw an exception if not found. It is okay. That's what we want to do. This will automatically throw an exception if it is not found. Therefore, I had to say throws my exception here. And if I don't see, I'll get a problem. See? Let's quickly. What is it saying? Unreported exception must be either caught or declared to be thrown. And in classes, we don't do tries. We say, oh, throw it away. It's just a class. You should know how to use the class. The person who wrote the string class or the array list class didn't bother to work with wrong inputs. It says, if I can do it, I can do it. If you try to access an array and the array is only of size 10 and you're trying to access element 12, what does it do? Index out of bound exception. You're doing the same. Right? That's what classes do. Classes, as I said, designed by contract. We have a contract with the class. The class says, here is an array. You can use 10 elements. The size is 10. You can go from 0 to 9. If you try to use an index beyond, below, or 0 or more than 9, throws an exception. That's exactly what you're doing. Right? You're saying, okay, I'm trying to find a product. I can't find it. So what do I do? Nothing. If everything is okay, if the product is found, if the product ID is found, you can be You can do the same thing by name also if you like. Nothing stops you. Instead of saying find product by ID, you can say find product by name. Then you will pass a name to it. You're looking for the first name. ID is just more, it's a better way of doing it because it's the primary key of your array list. It's like a primary key because your values are unique. Usually you find it by IDs, you don't find it by names, but you could, there's nothing stops you. If it was found, then what should you be doing? What do you have to do? You have to get that product's ID, right? So what was find product giving back to you? It was giving back a product to you. Remember, it was giving back a product to you. It was returning a value. If you don't save it somewhere, it's gone. So you have to save it somewhere if you need to use it. And now here, what must be you returning? You have that product, get its quantity, and return it. You don't have to use local variables to save it. Just say return p.getQuantity. There is a getQuantity method in the product class. So you can get the inventory by ID, you can get the inventory by name. I would avoid it. You can also get the inventory by product. You're giving me a whole product, like I can show you that also. So you can always get it by name also. So name is not so good, but anyway. I mean, you can do whatever you like. You can get quantity of product by ID. You can get quantity of product by name. You can get quantity of product by product. Instead of passing a string, you could even pass a product to it. Then again, you will use your contains method. If it contains it, here it is, else throw an exception. Right? You can do it by anything you like. So you can again make a note for yourself. You can use ID, name, or a product itself. I'm using an ID, but nothing stops you from using a name or using a product. In the name one, you have the same, instead of using find product by ID, you will use the method find product by name. And when you pass a product and you want to find it, then you will use your contains method of the array list. You will use the contains method of the array list. Okay. So I'm not going to repeat it. It's basically a copy and paste with some changes. I'll do it afterwards if I have to. Now let's write the other important methods. So what have I done? I have done a search, right? In search, I have done search quantity. I could do a search price also. There is no limit to it. I mean, you can write whatever methods. All you're doing is you're just using the logic to do it. I'm saying get quantity. You can say get price. I want to find out what's the price of product with P1, product ID P1. Instead of saying return get quantity, you can say return get price. What's the big deal, right? So you can do any kind of searches. We've done adds. Now let's come to updates and deletes. Okay. So I'll do the delete first just because it is easy, but you know what? It has to be done. So let's just do it in sequence. Okay. Now changing data. Now changing data can be done directly. I can change the ID. I can change the name, but I can always change the quantity and I can always change the price. I can do that. Those are simple. But indirectly, if I sell something, the quantity changes. If I add to the stock, quantity changes. Right? So I have to think of those methods. When you think of stock, you add something to the stock. You sell something from the stock. You usually don't go and say change your price. That change your price is more to do with the products changing price. Second, right? But you could, but I'm thinking of more on indirect methods. So I'm going to write a method now. So this method adds units to a product. Basically stocks it up. Okay, adds to the stock. This method adds units of a product in stock. So definitely, how many do you want to add and for which one do you want to add? Both have to work, right? So what do you want to add? How many? So I want to increase the quantity of, say, of my keyboards, or I want to increase the quantity of my mice, or I want to increase the quantity of my chairs. So I'm saying which one to add and how many do you want to add. So it will need two parameters, and those two parameters, again, you can take whatever there is. I mean, it really depends on how you're doing it. I'm going to take an ID. Because remember, I'm just saying ID is my primary key. The product ID that needs to be restocked or that need, I'm trying to write it more clearly. If the product ID that needs to be,
If you're remembering to restock, you can try putting a hyphen in there.
yeah, restocked is kind of saying it could be a negative or a positive. You know what I mean? But I'm only doing add. Anyway, let's see. And 2, you need another param. How many? How many of the? How many more to add? Okay. The number of units to add. Okay, so I need 2 parameters, right? Will it return anything? Again, it's up to you. True, false, if you want to say yes, they got added or not, or since I'm using exceptions, it will just throw an exception. If it is, something is wrong, okay? If something is wrong. So let's look at what is wrong. So the first job, what do you want to call it? It's public, returns nothing. Let's call it add stock. Or you can say add product to stock if you want, okay? You're not adding a product, you're adding quantity to an already existing product. Okay, so it needs 2 things from you. It will take a string and it will take an amount. And I'm sure it will throw an exception, but anyway, I'm almost positive. So I'm just going to write my exception. I'm not sure for now, but I'm almost positive. Why? Because if it is not found in stock. If product does not exist, you can also actually throw an exception yourself here, though your product will take care. You can never add a negative amount. Remember in that add stock, you couldn't add a negative amount, but you can always take care of it yourself also if you want. I mean, again, it's just doing more work, but being careful that you don't even go and call that method. I'll do both things myself, though my class will also do it. Every time I code defensively. I don't leave anything to may or may not. I'm always strict about what I'm doing. Keep that in mind as a programmer. Okay, okay. So what do you need to do? Before you can add to the stock, you can do first check, is your amount positive? So if my amount is less than 0, just throw an exception. You needn't even go further. What is the sense of going further? Though remember, this can also be done by the class. The product class will do it. I'm just doing it here. Amount or the number of units added. Must be greater than 0. Anything if you try to give, if it is less than or equal to 0, there is nothing to add. And again, I'll again stick to it. I only made 1. It's not a mistake. In 1, I kind of threw the exception afterwards, but this is always easy. Throw exceptions, just throw them first and then do the job afterwards. You have the option. You can do it opposite. You can do what you want to do, else throw the exception afterwards. It's up to you. I leave it to you. It's just my habit, nothing else. Okay, so if the amount is, and again, I'm saying this is kind of a redundant check, because if the amount is negative and I call the add stock method, it is also going to throw an exception. But I'm saying, why even call that method? Like, why? First, let's check and then call it. If that's the case, now my second job is what? I want to find if the product is even there. What was it called? This is find product by ID. Again, if the product was found, good. If it was not found, it is already throwing an exception on its own. But if it was found, what do I want to do then? My product is found. So if product is found, you only reach here if the product is found and amount is greater than 0. Make sense? So I'm now at the right position. If my amount, I threw an exception. I try to find the product. Remember, this will automatically throw an exception if you can't find it. If you found it, what do you have to do? Think about it. You have a P, you have an amount. To the P, call its add stock method and pass this amount. There, job done. Found it? So as I said, the first if is kind of redundant, because when I try to add to the stock and that amount is negative, the product class is also throwing an exception. You could avoid it I mean, you put, there's nothing big in it. I can avoid it because why do the same job twice? Remember, go back to your product. Go back to your ad stock. Look at your ad stock. See, it's already checking it. So you can avoid it. My thing is, why even check for the product? Why even find the product if it's not there? But this method will still catch it. So every class is doing all its job. So if you like, you can kind of put a comment for here. This will be done in ad stock of product. So may avoid it. I'm saying why even make this call? Why even do this? This is an easy check. But again, two programmers may have different viewpoints. One may say, at least it's a check. You're writing redundant code. You're repeating it. Why should you repeat it? It could be either way. And I am arguing that why even call it? I mean, if your amount is negative, why even bother looking for the product? Because that is a call, right? That's a call and it is doing a job of going through the whole list. Imagine if you have thousands of products in your inventory, you're kind of searching for it. Why even do it? So there's nothing wrong in it. It's just, why do extra one? Right? So, but this will do it automatically also. I'll keep this code. It's one if. It's not as if there are 10 lines of code and they are redundant. It is one if and it says, don't do the job. Okay? But I recommend it. It depends on you, right? I'll keep this here for you. It's up to you. So that's it. That's your ad stock. So find the product. If the product was found, add the amount. Make sense? So if you have done ad, you can now do your cells also. Cell will also be similar way. So there is a button. You keep in mind, the stock manager doesn't talk to the product. The stock manager talks to the inventory. So if I want to add something, I'll press the add inventory button. The add inventory calls the add of the product. If I want to sell something, I'll say sell from the stock. And the sell will call the sell of the product. Right? Because the work is being done there, there is a sell method there. But as an application, you won't be working with products, you will be working with inventory. Your application is going to work with the inventory. You're working with the table. You don't work with individual records. You work with the table. So therefore, okay, so now let's write the next one. 140 already. Okay. This method sells 1 unit of the product. Right? It sells 1 unit. So of course it will require a param. So the param will be the ID of the product to be sold. And it won't, again, we'll just throw exceptions. Okay, so let's write. It's a public method. Returns nothing. You could always return a true or a false. Work did not work. Yes, it was sold. It was not sold. Let's call it, what did we call it there? We called it, I can't remember. Sell product. I can't remember. Let's say sell product. Doesn't matter where it is called what. Oh, you will need an ID, right? IDs of type string. Right? Okay. Now I'm because they're all throwing exceptions somewhere or the other. Because it's going to do find again. How can you sell something without finding it? If product not found or does not exist or not in stock. So now notice how messages are so important. Every message must make sense. So there are 2 messages that can come up. You may not find the product or it may not be in stock. There are 2 things. Its quantity may be 0. Okay, so first find the product. How do you find the product? Same way as you did before. Go P, try to find it. Now, if you found it, if you didn't find it, of course, an exception will be thrown. Job done. If found. Now, what do you have to do? You have to sell it. And remember, there is a sell method there. So, P, I found you. sell yourself. Now I forget what it was called there. Oh, it was also called sell product. There, job done. So you need a sell product in the product because there where you're checking is the quantity enough. You can't do it here only. You know what I mean? Like, because selling and stocking is working with quantity, that class needs those methods. But you never call them directly. You call them through the inventory. I'm calling it through the inventory. The manager always talks to the inventory, not to the product. So here all I'm doing is I find the product. If I find it good, I sell it. Right? If you can sell one, can you sell more than one? Remember we had another method there. So copy and say this method sells some units. As soon as it comes some units, you will have two parameters. One, the ID, and two, how many to sell. Right? How many to sell. So the ID of the product to be sold, and you have a second param. How many to sell. An exception if product is not found or not enough in stock. There is a difference, right? That one was, you don't have it in stock, it's 0, and you are saying not enough in stock. So if I'm trying to sell 5, I at least need 5. Make sense? So here, before even going further, I'll do the first job. If my amount is less than or equal to 0, I'm going to throw an exception. Like it doesn't make sense. So you can copy that, throw new. Yeah, I created another method. We'll call it sell products. Right? I'll call it, now you can call it sell product also, doesn't matter actually, because it has two parameters. You can overload it. You can overload it. You don't have to give it a different name. If that makes more sense, I mean, it's fine. One only wants an ID, one wants an ID and amount. I can overload this method. Why? Because it has two parameters and that has one. What did product have, 2 or 1? I think it was also only had one overloaded one, sell product. Yep. So let's keep it overloaded here also. So let's call it sell product and with 2 parameters now. It still throws an exception if the product is not found or not enough in stock. Okay. So if your amount is great, or you can here, you can say or amount is less than 0. I mean, if you want to kind of talk about your parameters, which is good, you can talk here. You can talk of your parameters in your, you can talk about parameters. You cannot talk about your instance variables. So you're saying if the product is not found or my amount is less than or equal to 0, in both cases, I'll throw an exception. Okay. So if the amount is less than 0, number of units to be sold must be greater than 0. Here, make sense? Number of units to be sold must be greater than 0. You can't sell negative number of amount. Otherwise, find the product. So again, I've done this before even kind of going and finding the product. Find the product and then sell it. And this one needs an amount. So just call the correct one. No difference. So if the amount, again, as I have already mentioned, you needed to do the first check because the sell product will do it. For me, I just find it better to do it. Why even proceed? Make sense? So notice, I need a sell product in my inventory. I need a sell product amount in my inventory. All they do is they call the product. That's all they do. And then what else? We've done add stock. We've done sell products. There's so many, like I could write 30 methods in the same class. Nothing stops me because there are so many ways of searching. You see, there's so many ways of updating. For updating, it's usually sell and add stock. I've done both of them. What else remains? Of course, the toString remains and the remove remains. Where are we sitting? 146. Okay. Trying my best. Okay. Okay. So now I want to remove a product. Delete. I've done searches. I've done ads. I've done updates. I need deletes and I need toString. That's all I need. Okay, so let's try to delete something. Okay. Okay, so let's say this method removes a product or product details. It completely removes the product. We're not saying quantity is 0. We're removing a record. Delete is removing a record. Basically means you're not going to stock it anymore. That's what it means, right? So if you need to remove a product, you need its ID. Give me 5 minutes. Is it okay, guys? Do you have a class after me? I don't see anybody outside because otherwise we'll lose the connection. It's just 2 small methods. And if somebody has to leave, please do. Don't, all of you don't leave, please. The ID of the product to be removed. Okay. And again, you could be removing by ID, you could be removing by name, you could be removing by product, you could be doing any removes. Removes can be done in many ways, right? This one is removing by ID. And of course, it doesn't return anything. Okay, so what do? It's a public method, returns nothing, right? It's called remove product and give an ID. And again, as I mentioned, you could be removing by, you can remove all products by that name and so on. I'll show you how to do the name one is a little different. I'll do that maybe next time. Or you can just pass the whole product information and then kind of say, does it contain it and remove it? You know what I mean? Like you can do it that way also. So I'm sure, yeah, this will again throws my exception. By the name, I'll show you because the name one is a little difficult, not different. Okay, so let's remove it. My first job, find it. You have it? Oh. If it doesn't find it, it throws an exception, which is okay. Yeah, okay. That's fine. All it is doing is throwing an exception, which we are fine with, right? And if it was found, how do we remove it? Simple. There is a remove method. Take your stock and call remove. There is a remove all also for your information. From where you can remove. Notice how many removes do I have? I can remove an object. I can remove an object at a particular position. I can remove everything that matches a particular ID or whatever, and I can remove if the condition is true. So there are many removes. For me, the first one is fine. Which one do you want to remove, Yurti? Job done? Right? Job is done. So you have a remove all also. So in name, if you wanted to remove all by that name, you will use remove all. Right? All you have to do is look it up. That's all you have to do. So if you go here, there is a remove, but there is a remove all also. And remove, let's see what remove all needs. I think, remove all needs a collection. Remove all, removes from the list all of its elements that are contained in the specified collection. So for the name, you will first have to create a temporary array list. From that array list, you will pass that as a parameter and remove that. You'll have to do a little more work in remove that. I'll show it to you. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. And then comes the toString, the last one. Would you like to do remove all? It's not a, it's just a little different. I'm going to say remove products. And I'm going to give it a name. Yeah. Now here we'll have to use remove all. Why? Because remember, you can have more than one. So I'll just put a comment. Remove all products by same name. Right? And how do you do this? Give me 1 second. I'll copy for you. It's something you've done, so you don't need a lot of extra work. Except that there it is. Create a local array list and create it. Maybe I can call that method. Oh, there it is. If it is not empty, return it. Okay, here it is. What was it called? Find products by name. Oh, I don't even have to do anything. It's easy. I already have it. Create a local array list of type product. And let's call it, what do you want to call it? Product list, doesn't matter. All that find all. Find product by ID. There it is. Find products by name. There it is. It was returning you an array list for your information. Or the list by the same name. And then what you do is this, you go stock, remove all, and pass that product list. It does your job. There, easy. You already have a find method. You don't have to do it again. So call your find products by name. Why doesn't it like the last name? Why do I have a red squiggly? Oh, throws exception. All these methods, remember, were throwing exceptions. There it is, remove. All products have been removed by that name. Remove all products by same name. I didn't put Java doc comments just because I'm in a hurry. I'll fill it up. Make sense? So find all the products by the name. This method was returning an array list. This method was returning an array list, and you pass that array list to the remove all method. Remove all method removes all the elements in this collection. That's what it said. So you have to look it up. That's all you have to do. You have to look it up. And then, of course, the toString method is an easy one. Thank you for your patience, guys. It's done now. We are done. I just wanted to finish it. Otherwise, it would be too much to come back with it. You will lose it. Now, it depends on you. What would you like to return? Right now, what is it? It's a stock. It's an inventory. So maybe you would like to return information about all your strings, or about all your products. So let's say all products. Start with an empty one. Use a for loop. Get your product out of it. And to your all products, keep adding it. Remember the p.toString method? It already has a toString. Just add it. I don't know if it had a return value. Did the toString have a return value here? Otherwise, we'll have to add a return ourselves. That's all we'll have to do. I can't remember. Did it have a return value? I don't think so. We usually don't put a \n there, but it's not a big job to put it. Look at here. It is toString. Get quantity. Oh yeah, there is an %n. So there is a return there. So what will it say? It will say this. There are this many in stock of P1 at this price. There are this many of in stock in price, and so on and so forth. It will just complete it. Right? So that's it. Return all products. So start with an empty string and keep concatenating it to P, the toString method. You don't even have to say toString, you know that, right? When you don't put anything, it automatically calls the toString. Job done. So the stock class is complete. As I said, you could do much, like you can do whatever you like. I can make more searches if you like. You can add whatever you like. I could be searching by a product. I could be looking, I could be removing by a product. I give you the whole information. Remove this record, I would say. I could do that too. So this is not the end, but these are few methods that, of course, so what have I done? I've created a table in which I can insert, update, delete. All 4 operations that you were able to do with the table, I'm able to do with this. Right? So definitely we have to stop there. Thank you so much for your patience. But again, we have to come back and do the tester for it. So I'm going to do the normal tester, like I was writing an application. And I'm thinking of giving you to do the unit testing as an assignment of your product, of the stock class, of the product class, both classes. Right, so the classes will be given to you. I will give you the classes. They are almost neat. I'll neaten it up. I'll give you whatever I want to add more or whatever. And now then I'll say create an automated testing file. So you'll create a test file like we did last time. So all methods to be tested, all branches of every method to be tested. All I'll do is take your tester, run it. If I see JCO coverage, everything done, finished, full marks. You don't have to worry about it. You see how easy it will be. If it has tested all my methods, then I don't even have to kind of do anything. So that's my next assignment. That's what I'm thinking. I'll start marking your games today or tomorrow. Right? That's my last assignment before the midweek. In the sense, that's what's needed. I've seen everything, so I'm not so worried about it. It shouldn't take me time, but still, it does take time, and I sit one by one. Okay. So that's the next agenda. So I'll mark it. Hopefully by a week you will have that back. And then I'll give you your next assignment, which will be unit testing sometime this week, by the weekend. You'll have it. Okay. I can put this on Blackboard and then I can fill up the Java doc comments afterwards if you want. I can do that. Are we good?